Chapter 2581. Slap. Emolien slapped her chopsticks heavily on the table as she coldly gazed at that manager. You're quite arrogant. His lips curled into a mocking smile as he sneered. Steward, he followed suit and cupped his hands, looking as if he was ready to risk everything. Guests, please. Interesting. Even Eunuch couldn't help but be amused. These people truly weren't afraid of death. They were so eager to provoke His Highness the Crown Prince. Arbor couldn't be bothered to pay attention to these people and picked up her chopsticks to eat. The dishes tasted all right, but there was still a gap between them and her small kitchen. They didn't look very tasty, but the price was several times higher than that of ordinary restaurants and shops outside. Most likely this was the price set by the rich. In the eyes of those foolish rich people who had too much money, the higher the price, the better the food. Who would have thought that the taste was just so? Arbor was greatly disappointed and directly threw her chopsticks down, not eating anymore. She had only touched a few chopsticks with this table full of dishes. Her large eyes flickered as she beckoned to the waiter brothers standing next to her. Come, put it in a box. It wouldn't be good to waste so much food. She heard that many refugees had been arranged in the Huan Lang area in the western part of the city recently, so she'd just have someone send the food over. For some reason, the waiter brothers immediately obeyed and moved. Their behavior made manager glare at them in dissatisfaction. Who exactly was the master and who was the servant? He already said to chase these two people out, but no one dared to move. Now that they heard the little stoic's order, they immediately went to do it. It was simply infuriating. On the other hand, Arbor was very satisfied with these waiters' deft movements. She nodded and said to them, "Get a box and pad it with 2 pieces of cotton cloth. Don't let it get cold." The waiter busily found another box of cotton cloth and so on and wrapped the food properly. It was only then that Arbor said to the heir behind her, Hui Feng, "Hey, Crown Princess, tell me, what orders do you have?" Hui Feng giggled and flashed to their side. "Send this food to Huan Lang district in the west of the city and distribute it to the old, weak, women, and children." Steward, he was so angry that his nose was almost crooked. Could it be that no one would listen to a living person like him standing here? "What are you doing? Do you all want to rebel?" Steward, he shouted angrily at those workers with red eyebrows and green eyes. "If you don't want to work here, then scram. You didn't listen to me, but you followed 2 outsiders and worked blindly. Everyone stop." The employees looked at each other, and for a moment, they were all silent out of fear. They really didn't want to offend the 2 noble guests. With just one look, they could tell that these 2 people weren't people that ordinary workers like them could afford to offend. They went out to work because they wanted to earn more money. They didn't want to lose their lives. "Shut up." The little crown princess suddenly flared up. She slapped the table and reprimanded harshly, "You're like a housefly making noise. Slap your mouth." Eunuch was already fuming. When he heard the crown princess's order, he rolled up his sleeves without another word and slapped manager He's face. A lousy little manager dares to shout so casually in front of the crown prince and the crown princess. You simply don't want your life anymore. Mu Royun, who was originally immensely pleased with herself, was instantly stunned. The Crown Prince. Chapter 2582. Her short-circuited brain seemed to have just been reconnected. She stared blankly at Emolien, who was sitting at the table with a cold expression. How was this possible? His Highness the Crown Prince had such a high status. How could he accompany that little bitch to Despondent Pavilion to listen to music and watch performances? What did this woman do to deserve His Highness the Crown Prince's favor and even accompany her on a night tour? From what everyone said, wasn't she just a village woman from a mountain village? His Highness the Crown Prince occasionally brought her back to the divine prefecture out of kindness. When His Highness the Crown Prince saw the noble ladies of the divine prefecture, he would broaden his horizons and clearly understand the difference between that little bitch and the noble ladies of the divine prefecture. Sooner or later, wouldn't His Highness the Crown Prince kick this little bitch away? Mu Royun didn't know why, but her palms were sweating. She was only 14 years old. Although she was usually arrogant, she didn't have much ability. At a young age, she naturally didn't consider things thoroughly. Now that she encountered this situation, she could only stand there in a daze. Her mind instantly went blank and she didn't know how to react. On the side, Su Shitao was also stunned, and he sized up Crown Prince Mo in disbelief. What? This was His Highness the Crown Prince of the Divine Prefecture who had just entered the imperial capital? Arbor was amused by this woman's gaze. In her opinion, she would rather deal with a smart person like Jing Linyao than talk nonsense with this idiot in front of her. Have you seen enough? Miss Chiao wasn't happy that her man was being sized up by others. She coldly said, "Come, tie her up and send her back to Prince Zheng's estate." Tong's figure immediately appeared in front of Su Shitao. He didn't say anything and directly restrained her. Let go of me, you bastard. How dare you treat me like this? My big brother won't let you off." Su Shitao stared coldly at Arbor and shouted harshly, "Stay your hand." Suddenly, a calm voice interrupted the clamorous noise in the room. "Tao, how can you be so rude in front of His Highness the Crown Prince?" He was wearing a royal blue robe. His black hair was neatly combed and tied under an ink-colored crown. Mo Shikong walked in quickly and glared at his sister, Su Shitao, unhappily. Mo Shikong was about 27 or 28 years old. He looked like a very refined and gentle man. His appearance was not as outstanding as the Mo family. However, in front of the Crown Prince, who had a magnificent bearing and unparalleled handsomeness, Mo Shikong's elegant appearance and outstanding temperament did not pale in comparison. "Tao, why aren't you apologizing to the Crown Prince and Crown Princess?" Mo Shikong glanced at Su Shitao. Behind her was Mo Shikong's wife, Princess Consort Jing, Shi Yongyan. The moment she entered the room, she saw the little Crown Princess's deep, dark eyes. She couldn't help but feel nervous. Ever since the drama at General Zhong Li's residence, Shi Yongyan felt that the little Crown Princess was like a tigress that would explode at any moment. It was best not to provoke them if possible. Shi Yongyan's personality was much smoother than her arrogant second sister who didn't know etiquette. The moment she entered the room, she smiled and bowed. "Greetings to the Crown Prince and Crown Princess." Arbor returned half a bow and called faintly, "Sister-in-law." No matter what, as long as Prince Zheng was the great emperor's adopted son, he couldn't escape the title of adopted brother and sister-in-law in name. Arbor also knew how to put on an act. Wasn't it just pretending to be harmonious? Chapter 2583. Tao. Mo Shikong's tone sank slightly. Su Shitao stomped her feet and unwillingly bowed. She said to Mo Lian and Arbor, "Tao was immature and offended the two of you. Please forgive me." The situation was stronger than the person. She was only temporarily bowing her head. She wasn't trying to save face for the Crown Princess from the countryside. Su Shitao pursed her lips and barely suppressed the disdain in her eyes. Who knew how long the Crown Princess could remain? Sooner or later, His Majesty would find a way to replace her. To be honest, the many noble families in the capital all adopted a wait-and-see attitude. They didn't think highly of the young Crown Princess. Arbor coldly swept a glance at Mo Shikong. "King Zheng's apology is enough to let go of your sister's crime of disobeying this Crown Princess?" King Zheng, Mo Shikong, was slightly taken aback. Only then did he focus on sizing up the young Crown Princess. With such exquisite features and a cold and noble aura, was it really as the rumors said, that the Crown Prince Consort was just a young woman from a mountain village? Mo Shikong naturally wouldn't argue with Arbor. He only smiled and cupped his hands at Mo Lian. "His Highness the Crown Prince has only returned to the capital a few days ago, so I didn't dare to disturb him. I originally wanted to pay a visit tomorrow, but I didn't expect that things would be so coincidental that we would meet in the Despondent Pavilion. It's also because I didn't manage my sister properly that she became so arrogant and offended the Crown Prince and Crown Princess. I will apologize to the two of you on her behalf. I hope that the two of you will forgive her this time on account of her young age." Mo Shikong generously admitted his mistake and said with a smile, "When I return, I will definitely teach this child a lesson." Child? How old was she? She would never grow up? Arbor rolled her eyes. She felt that Mo Shikong was too gentle and not decisive enough. She disliked this temperament of his. It was no wonder that he taught his sister to be like this. Arbor only knew part of the story. In fact, Mo Shikong was wronged when it came to educating his sister. He had only met his biological parents 3 months ago. How could he talk about educating his sister? They had been separated for more than 20 years. However, it was true that he was indecisive and kind. He was a filial man. Seeing his biological parents living such a miserable life, he couldn't bear it. Taking them in seemed to be a matter of course. Mo Shikong saw that the little crown princess was unhappy, so he cupped his hands and said, "Please forgive me, sister-in-law." Since she had already said that, it would be unreasonable if she still did not forgive Mo Shikong's sister. Mo Lien turned to look at his little wife. He didn't care. If his little wife wanted to punish this arrogant Su Shitao, he would let her be. Of course, Jojo wouldn't make things difficult for him. After all, this was the first time he had met his sworn brother. He would give him face if he had to. However, Prince Zheng, is your sister's family living in your Prince Zheng's residence now? The little fellow asked with a stoic face. Then you really have to control them well. You can't go out and say that Prince Zheng's residence is undignified. After all, that family is living in your residence now. They represent the face of Prince Zheng's residence. These words struck a chord in Shi Yongyan's heart. She hadn't had a good time in the past few months. Ever since that family came, things hadn't stopped. Chapter 2584. Princess Consort Zheng was also very vexed by this strange family. There were some things that she didn't dare say as a daughter-in-law, but now that she heard the little crown princess say it, she was truly in a good mood. King Zheng also looked a bit embarrassed at the little crown princess's words. Su Shitao had always been arrogant and couldn't stand these words. He immediately screamed in anger, "What did you say, you bitch? Slap him." A cold light flashed through the little crown princess's eyes as she gave the order. Eunuch Chen didn't say another word and rushed up to slap Su Shitao. Mo Shikong started and hurriedly grabbed Eunuch Chen's hand, saying awkwardly, "Sister-in-law, please don't be angry." Eunuch Chen's heart sank. His cultivation was around the 7th level of the spirit realm, but Mo Shikong's seemingly easy grab didn't allow him to exert any strength at all. It could be seen that King Zheng was indeed as the rumors said. He was a spirit realm genius who could control the 9th level of the spirit fire. "King Zheng, are you looking down on me, the crown princess, by protecting me at every turn?" Arbor said coldly. "No wonder your sister treats me so disrespectfully. So it's because of her family's teachings. Bitch, who would respect a bitch from the lower star domain?" A slap. Mo Shikong turned around and slapped his stupid sister. "Shut her mouth and drag her out." He was almost breaking out in a cold sweat. This little crown princess was truly ruthless. She'd purposely led Su Shitao to curse out loud so that he could punish his stupid sister. Otherwise, if the crown princess did it, Su Shitao would be offended even more. "Crown princess, are you satisfied now?" Mo Shikong was also a bit angry. He hadn't wanted to go against the crown princess. He'd been adopted by the empress since he was young and deeply respected this adoptive mother. He naturally had to love and care for the empress's biological son, Mo Lien, as if he were his own younger brother. But today's matter, the way he saw it, the little crown princess was really a little immature. He had always been tolerant, but she was always picking on him. With such a crown princess around, how could the crown prince not worry about the future? Now, he felt that his foster father's dissatisfaction with this crown princess was pardonable. "Brother King Zheng, it's not that I, the crown princess, am criticizing you. With such a family staying in your residence, something will happen to you sooner or later." Arbor sneered and said coldly, "Do you think you're doing this for their own good? But you don't know that they are relying on your power to do whatever they want. Today, your sister can chase us away without saying a word. Tomorrow she will dare to kill us and rob us. You are Imperial Father's adopted son, and your name is also written into the Mo clan's genealogy. Your every word and action naturally represents the face of the royal family. Now that you've taken in such a pile of trash in your residence and are going out to smear the reputation of the Zheng family, I really can't help but suspect that your intelligence is worrying." Eunuch Chen was speechless. If Hu Dequan were here, he would definitely curl his lips in disdain. This was nothing. The little crown princess even dared to rebuke the emperor, not to mention a mere King Zheng. How laughable! Mo Shikong's face was a bit red. He angrily glanced at the little crown princess. Crown prince, isn't the crown princess words a bit too much? The crown prince sneered. Foster brother, do you know what my sister calls herself when she goes out? Princess Tao. I really didn't know that the title of princess could be self-proclaimed. This Princess Tao really opened my eyes. Chapter 2585. Mo Shikong's face heated up. It wasn't that he didn't know that his younger sister had been called Princess Tao by others. It was just that he didn't take it seriously when he saw that it was just a name that girls used in private. After being mocked by Mo Lien in such a mocking tone today, he instantly felt like he couldn't get out of the situation. Princess Tao, who was gagged by several servants, glared at Mo Lien and Arbor with fire shooting out of her eyes. She was still struggling and trying to shout angrily. However, her mouth was gagged, so no matter how hard she tried, it was useless. Watching from the side, Princess Consort wiped the corner of her mouth with a handkerchief, covering the faint sneer on her lips. Today, Princess Tao was slapped in the face by the Crown Prince and Crown Princess. Who knew how she would make a fuss when she returned home? Princess Consort had to conserve her energy and return to Prince Zheng's estate to deal with that disgusting family. Mo Shikong opened his mouth and closed it again. He cupped his hands at the Crown Prince and said, "In that case, I will take Tao back first. Don't worry, Crown Prince and Crown Princess. I will discipline Tao well." With that, he waved his hand and had someone escort the struggling Su Shi Tao away. Prince Mo naturally didn't stop him. He just looked up coldly at their backs. He originally wanted to bring his wife to watch the performance. After such a fuss, his wife would definitely be in a bad mood. On the other side, Steward He, whose mouth was crooked after being slapped, had already been thrown out of the door by Eunuch Qin. As for Mu Royun, she had already slipped away when she saw that the situation wasn't good. What was the point of keeping her? Keeping her for the Crown Prince to punish her? Mu Royun, who had escaped from Despondent Pavilion, finally heaved a long sigh of relief. However, she also felt that her actions were too cowardly. She stomped her feet hatefully and angrily walked towards the Mu residence. Mo Lien turned around and saw that the little fellow had already run to the window and was lying there, watching the performance with relish. Seeing that her mood was not affected at all, Mo Lien was happy. She walked to her side and hugged her, asking, "Why aren't you angry? Are you angry with them?" Arbor curled his lips in disdain. "They're just a bunch of random people. It's not worth getting angry over." Mo Lien was happy to hear that. She lowered her head and rubbed her chin on the top of the little guy's head. "That's right. It's good that Jojo thinks that way." Mr. Jojo looked up at him. "I'm very smart." "Yeah, that's for sure." Mo Lien grinned at her. "Jojo, I'm hungry. Do you have anything good to eat?" Jojo immediately took out a variety of dishes and desserts from the multi-purpose endless food box. This Despondent Pavilion has a great reputation. It's made for a good show, but the dishes are really ordinary. It's really not as good as the dishes in her treasure box. This treasure box is really strange. It's filled with all kinds of dishes. She felt that it could almost store all the dishes in the restaurants of the entire continent. The two of them sat by the window, eating while watching the performance on the stage downstairs. This program was really well done. It wasn't just a simple song and dance performance. After the song and dance ended, someone came up to play and sing a song. There were also storytelling and juggling, which were all very popular. There was a woman who performed a butterfly dance, and a local tyrant gave her 100,000 spirit coins as a gift. The Despondent Pavilion was struck with gongs and drums. The list of gifts hanging on the left wall was immediately updated, and this local tyrant ascended to second place. The first local tyrant gave 500,000 spirit coins in one go, and so far, no one has broken through. Chapter 2586. Jojo glanced at the top of the list hanging on the wall, and felt that the name was somewhat familiar. "Lien, look, that fool's surname is also Mo Lien's." Mouth twitched, "And we know each other." Sir Jojo curiously looked again. Who is it? Mo-kun, the heir apparent of the Duke of Giantpain. Sir Jojo clearly couldn't remember who this person was. Mo-lien smiled and said, "It's that fool that you threw into the pigsty to dance with the sows?" With that, Sir Jojo completely remembered. He looked at the top of the list in astonishment and nodded. So it's him? He's really rich. Does the Duke of Giantpain know that he squanders money like water? Mo-lien said in amusement, "Who knows? Maybe he knows. The Duke of Giantpain only has this one legitimate son, so he must dote on him a lot." Arbor pursed her lips. Her words were full of contempt. As they spoke, a group of young masters walked in from outside the Despondent Pavilion's main hall, accompanied by several beautiful women in fluttering, colorful clothes. Speak of the devil. Arbor rolled her eyes and propped up her chin with one hand. Wasn't the leader of this group of young masters the same fool that she had thrown into the pigsty? The heir apparent of the Duke of Giantpain, Mo-kun, was holding a delicate young lady in one hand and playing with two large Eastern pearls in the other. The moment he entered, he shouted loudly, "Where's Xiao Sui? Let Xiao Sui come and accompany this heir." "Lord Heir Apparent, you're here?" Steward He, whose face was bruised and swollen from the beating, hurriedly ran forward and bowed to say a bunch of good words. The heir apparent of the Duke of Giantpain, Mo-kun, pointed at the group of good-for-nothings behind him and shouted, "Serve them good tea and good wine. These are all my sworn brothers." Yes. Steward He immediately beamed with joy and personally led the Crown Prince of Giantpain's group to the private room on the second floor. Because the Crown Prince of Giantpain was the #1 nouveau riche on the list of gifts, the Despondent Pavilion had always reserved a super luxurious private room for him. The vassal prince exuded a domineering aura as he led his group of Silk Pants brothers to the second floor in high spirits. When he reached Mo-lien's room, he couldn't help but frown when he saw the mess on the floor. What happened? Why are there so many broken pieces of porcelain on the floor? Steward He covered his face and grimaced in pain. He stealthily approached the Crown Prince and said, "Crown Prince, to tell you the truth, there are two great Buddhas here. You can't afford to provoke them." He was almost scared to death just now. He didn't expect that the two people were the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess. They were almost killed by the 6th Mississippi. If he had known that the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess were in this private room, how could he have the guts to chase them away? Who is it? Not only did his words not make the Crown Prince of Giantpain back down, but it also piqued his curiosity. "It's His Highness the Crown Prince and Her Highness the Crown Princess," Steward He said softly. The Crown Prince of Giantpain's expression instantly changed. "It's them? Why did this pair of enemies come to the Despondent Pavilion?" When he thought of the Crown Princess's terrifying methods, the Crown Prince of Giantpain felt a chill run down his spine. It was as if he had returned to that day when he was chased by a pig and his legs turned to jelly, causing him to pee in fright. He immediately felt unwell all over. With a darkened expression, the Crown Prince of Giantpain clenched his fists and was about to calmly flee, who knew that one of his close little brothers behind him, who usually looked rather quick-witted, had a screw loose today. Chapter 2587. That good-for-nothing little brother simply didn't hear Steward He mention the identity of the Crown Prince and Crown Prince Consort. He directly went up and impatiently kicked the door. "What the hell is this? What two great Buddhas can't be provoked? Why don't you come out and let this lord take a look?" The Duke of Giantpain's heir wished that he could slap the back of his head. This pig's brain was going to be ruined by him today. "Hurry up and leave quickly." The Duke of Giantpain's heir, Mo-kun, freaking didn't want to appear so cowardly, but he really was. Right now, just hearing the young Crown Prince Consort's name was enough to make him feel freaking uneasy for no reason. If he could avoid meeting that couple, it would be best if he didn't have to. Eunuch Chen's face was full of anger as he abruptly pulled open the door to the private room. "Are you done yet?" The first thing he saw was Steward He's stupefied face. He went up and kicked Steward He in the stomach. "You're courting death. Offending His Highness and Her Highness again and again. Do you really want to die?" Steward He sobbed as he flew out. He felt that he had never been so unlucky in his life. Today's unlucky events all happened today, No, all of them happened tonight. What did he do? He didn't do anything, all right? Eunuch Chin, are you blind? He was just so unlucky to be standing in front of these pampered young masters. After Stewart he flew out, the Duke of Giantpain's heir, who was hiding behind, revealed his head and met Sir Jojo's pitch-black eyes with a changed expression. Don't come over. The Duke of Giantpain's heir's piercing scream instantly gave all the little brothers a fright. Fuck, this Duke of Giantpain's heir actually let out such a scream, like a little chick whose neck was being strangled before it died. Wasn't this a bit too much? That good-for-nothing little brother, Shi Jinbao, who kicked the door first, was a bit drunk and his eyes were hazy. When he looked over, he just happened to see the little girl's delicate face, and his eyes immediately widened in delight. The young lady inside is really beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Shi Jinbao racked his brains to come up with these words, and walked in with a salivating face. Behind him, the Crown Prince of Giantpain widened his eyes and opened his mouth. In the end he screamed, "Come back!" The others all felt that the Crown Prince of Giantpain's state today was somewhat laughable. Why was she screaming when she was speaking? What was going on? The Crown Prince of Giantpain was really scared to death. He didn't expect that he wouldn't be mentally prepared at all. He actually opened the door at once and was about to face that crazy couple. In his opinion, the couple was no different from demons. He was scared. He admitted that he was terrified. His entire body was secretly trembling. Seeing Shi Jinbao's suicidal behavior, his first instinct was to abandon this pig of a teammate and quickly flee. In fact, the Crown Prince of Giantpain had really escaped when the rest of the young brothers saw the cowardly appearance of the Crown Prince of Giantpain. Their eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. Your Highness? What was going on with the heir? Seeing that the Crown Prince of Giantpain didn't even look back as he stomped down the stairs, he couldn't care less about the beauty in his arms and his brothers. As though he was scared silly, he screamed and ran out of the despondent pavilion's main entrance. Everyone was simultaneously petrified. Fuck, was there going to be a red rain today? The devil incarnate, the Crown Prince of Giantpain, was actually scared away by a little girl with a stoic face who hadn't even spoken. Chapter 2588. Everyone curiously sized up the little stoic in unison. And at this time, that disaster-seeking Shi Jinbao had already swaggered to the little stoic's front in an S-shaped gait. Before he could reach out to tease her, he saw the man on the side sweep over with a furious expression. He pulled the little stoic girl into his arms and sent Shi Jinbao flying with a punch without the slightest hesitation. Shi Jinbao flew out with a xiao sound, and his entire back landed heavily on the door. He very straightforwardly and nimbly bounced out together with the door. He landed heavily on the ground with a bang. Shi Jinbao was sprawled out on the door, sprawled out on all fours. He didn't move for a long time, so he was probably knocked unconscious by Emolien's punch. The other profligates roared and slammed tables and smashed stools. Each of them was like an idiot who suddenly went berserk, about to charge into the private room with scowling eyes. Fire explosion talisman. Boom! Inside the Zenith Palace. After a busy day, the Emperor had just finished tidying himself up and planned to go to bed. Your Majesty, ah. Upon hearing that familiar voice, Emo Liusheng's eyes twitched, and he hastily said to Hu Dequan, who was standing on the side, Quickly close the palace door. We are going to bed. Hu Dequan, Your Majesty, aren't you joking? The old Prince of Giantpain has already come crying to our door. King Giantpain rolled in like a round ball. Rolling and crawling, he knelt down in the bedchamber, crying and crying, Your Majesty. If you don't uphold justice for this subject brother this time, this subject brother really won't be able to continue living. Your Majesty, ah. The Prince of Giantpain crawled on the floor, dragging himself across the floor like a rag. He wailed, Your Majesty, ah. The Crown Prince and his wife have no regard for law and discipline, and have no moral principles. They blew up our family's kuan on the streets. This subject brother's family is reservedly doing our work for Your Majesty, and bowing down to the essence of our divine province. We ask ourselves, we have not let down the heavens and the earth. Ah, Crown Prince and his wife, how can you treat my son like this? The great emperor felt a headache coming on. He calmed himself down and tried to use a calm voice to ask his brother, Giant Pain, get up and talk. What happened? Your Majesty, Your Majesty. The crown princess is unruly and arrogant. She blasted my son, Kuan Air, until he was covered in cuts and bruises in the dejected pavilion. Not only that, the Shur family, the Long family, and the Gu family's children were all injured by her explosion talismans. The great emperor's eyelids twitched. He really wanted to ask them, why did you go and provoke that stoic face for no reason? Aren't you guys just looking for a beating? Even he was insulted by the stoic face last time. The stoic face didn't even give face to him, the great emperor of the divine prefecture, so how could he give face to you brats? Although King Giant Pain was crying and shouting, his two eyes were staring at the great emperor, secretly observing him. This time, when he saw the great emperor's calm expression and even secretly rolling his eyes, he felt his heart sink. Fuck, what did the great emperor mean by this? Did he feel that this matter was no longer strange? Or was it that his son, Mo Kuan, was beaten for nothing this time again? Your Majesty, the crown princess is audacious and presumptuous, and her temperament is extremely vile. This subject brother thinks that she must be properly punished this time. King Giant Pain said indignantly, after my son, Kuan, returned, he was covered in wounds. Chapter 2589. Most importantly, he was still caught in a nightmare. If it wasn't for Jing Meng spilling the beans today, this subject brother would still be in the dark. Your Majesty, do you know how vicious the crown princess is? My son Mo Kuan sent so many beauties to the crown prince out of goodwill. That crown princess is jealous by nature. She's lawless. The old king of Giant Pain roared with a red face and neck. Not only did she throw those beauties into the inn as broom maids, she even locked the kind-hearted Kuan into a pigsty. She let a large group of sows chase after him. My son is still traumatized by it. He has nightmares when he sleeps and sees sows chasing after him when he closes his eyes. After Hu Dequan burst out laughing, he suddenly realized that something was wrong. He hurriedly shut his mouth and knelt down with a red face. Fuck, the little crown princess is too fierce. The emperor, the old king of Giant Pain, was still nagging about the crown princess. But the emperor's thoughts had already wandered off. At this moment he actually thought of his Wu Xia. His Wu Xia was riding on a snow wolf in high spirits, driving a group of female wolves with her whip as she chased after the battered and exhausted Giant Pain who was fleeing in front of her. Giant Pain, don't you like females? I'll give you a group. Won't you be happy? Giant Pain, the next time you dare to send those flirtatious bitches to my son, I'll let you have a taste of being fucked by a group of flirtatious bitches. The emperor looked at his younger brother as if he was looking at a weirdo. The same formula and the same ingredients. The emperor realized that his daughter-in-law actually had a certain degree of resemblance to his daughter-in-law. Pooh. That wasn't his daughter-in-law. He hadn't admitted it yet. Hu Dequan's mouth twitched. He hurriedly coughed lightly and said, King of Giant Pain, His Majesty already needs to rest. Don't make a fuss and go back first. His Majesty already knows about this. He'll talk about the crown princess later. What? Talk about the crown princess? Who didn't know how to talk? It would only take a few minutes to talk. Was it enough just to talk? Would talking about it make up for the fright her son had suffered? How preposterous! The great emperor coughed lightly. Giant Pain. Actually, don't you think this scene is a little familiar? Like hell I'm familiar. King Giant Pain wanted to curse, but he didn't dare to. The great emperor thought about it and decided to forget about it. Perhaps Giant Pain didn't want to recall such an unbearable scene? He winked at Hu Dequan. Hu Dequan eagerly stepped forward and said, King Giant Pain, the emperor will definitely have a good talk with the crown princess. Don't worry, the crown princess will definitely not dare to make a move on the crown prince next time. I don't want to scold her. I want to arrest her and punish her. This is simply lawless and lawless. Look at what you've done to the children of the Shur, Long, Gu, and other families. This is too much. Yes, yes, yes. Hu Dequan hurriedly nodded and persuaded the king of Giant Pain to leave. When the king of Giant Pain returned home and saw his unconscious son, he became angrier and angrier the more he thought about it. He didn't sleep well the whole night. The next day, he furiously drafted a memorial and impeached the crown princess the moment he went to court. The ministers didn't expect to face such an explosive matter the moment they went to court today. Hence, the entire court was in an uproar. The great emperor also didn't expect Giant Pain to do such a thing. He immediately glared at him. After the king of Giant Pain handed the memorial in, he regretted it a little. Chapter 2590. He didn't want to do this either, but who asked the emperor's attitude to be so ambiguous? He couldn't take it lying down just by talking about it. He had to give this crown princess a huge punishment. The emperor said a few words to the courtiers and dismissed the court. He directly led the king of Giant Pain and 5 or 6 old censors back to the imperial study and summoned the crown prince and crown princess for an audience. If today's matter wasn't made clear, it seemed that the king of Giant Pain wouldn't let it go. The emperor glanced coldly at the king of Giant Pain with a sullen face. The old king of Giant Pain trembled and looked down. Since things had already come to this point, there was no other way but to continue. He would take this opportunity to take down that crown princess's spirit, lest she always thought that the Mo family was easy to bully. The crown prince and crown princess have an audience. Following the announcement, a couple in fiery red robes walked in hand. The emperor's eyes twitched slightly, because he remembered that when this couple came for an audience for the first time, they were also wearing bright red robes. Cough, it couldn't be what he was thinking, right? Wearing fiery red robes to participate in a fiery red battle? There were other people present in the imperial study today, so the couple reluctantly bowed to the emperor. Greetings, imperial father. The king of Giant Pain snorted angrily. The crown prince really can't see others. Excuse me, who are you? The crown prince glanced at him indifferently and asked calmly, I'm your uncle, the king of Giant Pain. The king of Giant Pain was so angry that smoke was coming out of his head. He didn't believe that this pretentious couple didn't know him. Since the crown prince wanted to return to the imperial court, how could he not understand the situation in the imperial court and all the officials? Keep pretending. The old king of Giant Pain was so angry that his heart hurt, but he only snorted heavily and forcefully suppressed this anger. Oh, so it's uncle, the king of Giant Pain. Greetings, greetings. The crown prince cupped his hands toward the king of Giant Pain without much sincerity, but there was a trace of coldness in the depths of his eyes. It was faint and extremely cold. Since trouble had come knocking on their door, the couple was not afraid. In any case, no matter where this matter was discussed, it was impossible for him to say anything. The king of Giant Pain impeached the crown princess, saying that she hurt people at the Despondent Pavilion for no reason yesterday. She used an explosion talisman to injure the crown prince of Giant Pain, as well as many young masters from the Shur, Long, and Gu families. Crown princess, do you have anything to say? Crown prince of Giant Pain? I don't know. The little crown princess said indifferently, but I was the one who blew up the other rich kids. So what? The king of Giant Pain was so angry that his nose was crooked. He pointed at the little crown princess and turned around to say to the emperor, Your Majesty, look at that arrogant and despotic attitude. That's it. He still refuses to admit that he injured my kun. My kun is still lying in bed. What a load of nonsense. The little crown princess swept a cold glance at the king of Giant Pain. Your son had already escaped before I activated the talisman, all right? How would I have known that the moment he stepped out, he would actually be knocked unconscious by a sandalwood table that flew out of the window? This can only be said to be his own bad luck. There are so many people in the Despondent Pavilion. Aside from those few rich kids, everyone else is fine. Why is it that only the crown prince is in trouble? He's unlucky, yet he refuses to admit it. Simply baffling. The old king of Giant Pain almost fainted in one breath. He pointed at the crown princess and trembled with all his might. You! A fierce glint appeared in the little crown princess's eyes. You dare to point at me and nag again? I'll kill you. The end of the night watch. Chapter 2591. The Imperial censors all jumped in fright. Fuck, why did this scene seem a little familiar? The Emperor sat behind the desk and silently twitched the corners of his eyes. Oh right, Wuxia also pointed at you and threatened you in this way back then. It was a must for the situation to be similar. The old king of Giant Pain's eyes widened. He had never seen such a vile girl before. Oh no, he seemed to have seen one a few decades ago, but she was not so direct as to say that she would kill him if he continued to nag. She was not so scary, you. The king of Giant Pain was so angry that his chest hurt, and he almost couldn't breathe. You actually dared to be so impudent in front of the Emperor. Cut the crap. Your son's incident was merely an accident and has nothing to do with me. As for the other families you mentioned, Arbor pointed at Eunuch Qin who came with him. You tell him. Emo Lien curled her lips in amusement. The little fellow was unhappy to talk again. Eunuch Qin ran forward eagerly and recounted in full detail how those hedonistic young masters tried to take liberties with the crown princess and were abused instead. Then he picked up the decree written by the crown prince and said, Your Majesty. The crown prince said that after this incident, Her Highness the crown princess suffered quite a shock and requires the Sher family, Long family, Gu family and the other families to compensate. The compensation amount and items are all written on this piece of paper. He hopes that Your Majesty will stamp it and have Eunuch who announce the decree. The Emperor's eyes twitched. Not only did this brat cheat his father, but he also cheated everyone he caught. The Emperor waved his hand expressionlessly and had Eunuch who stamp it. Then he held the decree and scooted to the side to stand. King of Giant Pain said angrily, even if there was a reason, the crown princess could have just explained it to them. Why did she have to use an explosion talisman and blow up the entire room of the despondent pavilion? Eunuch Qin said in all seriousness, the crown princess said that the despondent pavilion's management was messy and they didn't know how to manage it. They carelessly let the male guests offend Her Highness. She will hold the despondent pavilion accountable after this incident. Everyone was speechless. The censors looked at each other and took a step back. They all closed their mouths in tacit agreement and continued to act like quails. Are you kidding me? They could tell that this crown prince consort wasn't someone to be trifled with. You want to step on her head and behave atrociously? It's good enough that you didn't get killed. King Giant Pain's face darkened as he tried his best to refute. All right, let's just say this is a misunderstanding. What about before? What about that time in the pigsty? The crown princess locked the crown prince in the pigsty and almost scared me out of my wits. You must give me an explanation for this. Arbor took out a piece of paper from his inner world and suddenly threw it at King Giant Pain's face. Take a good look at it yourself. When King Giant Pain saw this confession, he was completely dumbfounded. He really didn't expect that this stupid son of his would actually write something like a confession. Just as he was about to gobble up this confession form, Xiao Mu had already snatched the confession form from his hand with a flash. She slapped it in front of the Emperor and instantly turned hostile, shouting, Royal Father! I want to hold the Crown Prince of Giant Pain accountable. I want him to give me and His Highness the Crown Prince an explanation. The Emperor's eyelids kept twitching. When he saw this confession clearly, his expression was not much different from King Giant Pain's. Imperial Father, did you see it? The Crown Prince of Giant Pain has already confessed. Chapter 2592. He sent people to assassinate the Crown Prince in Shuntian Prefecture and committed the crime of disrespect to the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess. All of these crimes are punishable by death. The little Crown Princess said angrily, I request that the heir of the Duke of Giant Pain be executed immediately as a warning to others. Imperial Father. This son also requests that the heir of the Duke of Giant Pain be executed immediately. Emolian also said, the evidence of the heir of the Duke of Giant Pain's crimes is conclusive. He cannot deny it. The Duke of Giant Pain! Exclamation point. The Emperor. The two of them spoke in unison. Why did they look so infuriating? Duke of Giant Pain, what do you say? The emperor massaged the space between his brows with a headache. This matter had inexplicably taken a turn in the middle and evolved into the current situation. Clearly, it was the Duke of Giantpain who impeached the crown princess in the beginning. In the end, it became the crown princess testifying against the heir of the Duke of Giantpain. This confession was really written very clearly. The heir of the Duke of Giantpain also admitted to the crime of assassinating the crown prince. The emperor directly threw the confession at the Duke of Giantpain's face. Giantpain, Mo Kuan's actions have truly disappointed us. What else do you have to say? The Duke of Giantpain had a stupefied expression. Reflexively, he turned around and hurriedly knelt on the ground with a plop, wailing in a tearful voice, "Your Majesty, Your Majesty! I, Kuan, would never do such a disgraceful thing. This must be it, this must be it. He was forced to write such a confession. This must be it." The Duke of Giantpain said hoarsely, "Imperial brother, you must uphold justice for Kuan. Imperial brother, this subject brother dares to guarantee with my head that Kuan, this child, would not do such a thing. He also does not have the guts to do such a thing." Mo Lien sneered. "Imperial uncle, you must be joking when you say this. The confession is already here. If Imperial uncle wants witnesses, this crown prince did leave 1 or 2 witnesses for the assassination back then. Why don't we call them all over and let Imperial uncle interrogate them?" The old King Giantpain's chubby face was instantly filled with anger. He twitched his mouth and wanted to refute, but the great emperor glared at him with a sharp gaze. "Giantpain, Mo Kuan's confession is a fact. There's no need for you to quibble." "No. How could the old King Giantpain dare to admit to this crime? Assassinating the current crown prince, was that a joke? That was a crime punishable by death. If he admitted to this crime, Mo Kuan would be done for." Your Majesty, please listen to me." The old King of Giantpain hurriedly argued, "This must be a joke. Yes, this confession must be written by Kuan, for fun. This is definitely not true. Crown Princess." The old King of Giantpain hurriedly turned around and looked for Arbor with sweat all over his forehead. "Is that right? That brat Mo Kuan must have written this nonsense, right?" Xiao Mu coldly glanced at him. "How do I know whether or not he's writing nonsense? Didn't you want to impeach me? Didn't you want to complain to the great emperor? You are the King of Giantpain, don't you have this bit of judgment?" All the imperial censors were instantly speechless. The crown princess' tone was really ruthless. This was just like 2 little brats who had just finished fighting and one of them went to complain to the other's parent. In the end, the one who complained was beaten up by the parent instead, and the defendant was proudly showing off in front of him. The King of Giantpain's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He hurriedly took down the letter of impeachment he handed to the great emperor and tore it into pieces, stuffing it all into his mouth. I won't sue. I won't sue." Chapter 2593. The Prince of Giantpain forcefully swallowed the impeachment letter. As he swallowed, he mumbled, "Your Majesty, just treat this subject brother as a fart and let him go just like that. Just treat this impeachment letter as if you've never seen it before. All right?" The emperor, all the imperial censors were even more flabbergasted. Did the Prince of Giantpain's godly maneuver have to be so heaven-defying? Mo Lien secretly twitched her mouth. He still maintained his aloof expression, neither speaking nor expressing any opinion, but he was secretly laughing maniacally in his heart. No way. This was seriously too funny. He was laughing so hard that he was about to suffer internal injuries. This uncle of his looked like a clown no matter how he looked at it. Arbor's little face was cold as he glanced indifferently at the Prince of Giantpain. The Prince of Giantpain hurried forward and smiled obsequiously at Arbor as he said, "Crown Princess, look at this confession letter. Why don't I eat it as well?" Teach Hu Duquan lowered his head and hurriedly swallowed his laughter. But from the looks of it, those few old imperial censors beside him were freaking having a harder time holding it in than him. No way, no way. Was this Prince of Giantpain really born from the same father as the emperor? Enough. The emperor's eyes twitched, and he said coldly with a handsome face, "Let's not talk nonsense anymore. This should just be a misunderstanding. Giantpain, You have to go back and discipline Mo Kun properly. If he dares to mess around again, I won't let him off so easily. Arbor raised his chin and said with a little pride, "It's not impossible for me to treat this as if it never happened. But you have to compensate. Mo Lien, the Emperor, all the imperial censors, I want to pursue the compensation responsibility of the Prince of Jianpei's heir." Arbor widened his big black eyes as he looked at the Emperor and said, "Royal Father, this is the compensation list that your daughter-in-law drafted. You can stamp it for Royal Uncle." Everyone, Jianpei Wang was about to cry. How did he end up with such a shameless couple? His Kuan had suffered such a great shock that he was still lying on the bed and had not yet woken up. He did not expect that the little crown princess would not let him go. "All right, compensation is fine. If I can spend some compensation to settle this matter privately, it can be considered a blessing in disguise." One had to know that the matter of admitting guilt could be big or small. If Mo Kun were to really pursue the matter, it would be questionable whether he would be able to keep his life. Prince Jianpei took the list of compensation from Eunuch Hu with both hands. He didn't understand what the sympathy in Eunuch Hu's eyes meant. However, when the list of compensation slid to the ground like a long scroll, everyone was stunned. The censors looked at the little crown princess as if they were looking at a little monster. Prince Jianpei held the scroll with even more heartache. He looked at the lines one by one. Every time he looked at a line, his brows would twitch heavily and his old face would twitch. The Crown Princess list of compensation, from food and drinks to daily necessities to real estate and fields, were all ordinary items. In addition, the list also included many rare treasures and some refining materials that he had never heard of before. Prince Jianpei looked at the Crown Princess in shock. His face was almost contorted. The Emperor expressed sympathy for this little brother of his, and then there was nothing else. "Your Highness, Crown Princess, isn't this a little too much?" "How is this too much?" Arbor shouted angrily, his little face immediately tensing up. Chapter 2594. He was on the verge of exploding at any moment. "You're saying this because you think that the heir's life is inferior to the compensation list in your hand?" "Oh no, that's not what I meant." "Then what do you mean?" "Royal Uncle, I really couldn't tell that you were actually so stingy." Everyone, Mo Lien didn't know why, but those imperial censors were actually looking at him. What were they looking at him for? Wasn't this the list that his wife personally drafted? Although it was a little long and there were many items listed in the list, his wife was happy. Anything that could make his wife happy, he would definitely run to the front and support without hesitation. The Prince of Jianpei pointed at his own nose and stuttered, I'm stingy? Crown Princess, you actually said that I'm stingy? Why aren't you stingy anymore? Let's just talk about Prince Kong. We're both uncles, but Prince Kong didn't even need us to say anything. The first time we met, he gave a generous gift. Have you heard of Half Moon Cliff's splendid villa? And the 5 prosperous shops on Changle Street, do you know? What do you mean by this? Arbor slapped the list in his hand and glanced at Mo Lien at the side. Mo Lien couldn't help but laugh, knowing that this little fellow was unhappy to talk again. With the idea of following his wife in everything, the Crown Prince hurriedly continued, "Royal Uncle, don't get it wrong. This is the compensation list. It's used to buy Mo Kun's life. If this Crown Prince must pursue the matter, I'll add a confession and a witness. Do you think that you can keep Mo Kun's life? Right now, we only want you to compensate. You'd better be clear that you don't have the right to negotiate with us." Everyone, the great emperor massaged his temples. "That's enough. Your Majesty." The Prince of Jianpei had always been under the emperor's care in the capital all these years, so when had he ever suffered such a loss? The moment he turned his head, his eyes were brimming with tears as he rushed over like a puppy. He hugged the emperor's leg and cried, "How can this subject brother have so much money to compensate? This subject brother still has to support the old and young in the residence." The imperial censors looked at the Prince of Jianpei crying like they were watching a show, their brows twitching. "Your Majesty! Royal brother, I can't live anymore. Brother, You have to save me this time. If you don't save me, my entire family will starve to death on the streets. Shut up. The great emperor had a headache because of his younger brother. In the end, he decided to pay half of the compensation for his troublesome younger brother. Only then did he send King Giant Pain away. After telling everyone to scram, the great emperor hurriedly ordered Hu Dequan to close the door of the sleeping chamber. No matter who came, he would not see them. What a freaking worry. On the other side, the old king of Giant Pain was like a ball, fuming as he returned to his residence. She heard a servant report that the heir had finally woken up. He immediately found a way to vent his frustration. He stormed into the crown prince's room and gave his youngest son a good beating without saying a word. That night, the concubine sons and concubine wives in the other courts spent the night in fear. They could only hear the miserable cries in the crown prince's court that never stopped. The prince of Giant Pain was truly furious this time. If it wasn't for this bastard son coming up with that confession, would he have suffered such a big loss and lost so much blood? Chapter 2595. Although the great emperor had given him half of the compensation, the other half had almost emptied his family's property. He was wronged. As for the other families who were as unlucky as Prince Giant Pain, the Long family, Gu family, and Sher family, they naturally had no answer. Eunuch who went from house to house to announce the decree. Every family closed their doors and fell into a gloomy and miserable atmosphere. The worst thing was that on the second day, the crown princess's debt collectors came. Early in the morning, they went from house to house and knocked on their doors. The first one was Prince Giant Pain's door. At that time, the sky was still bright. The old steward rubbed his eyes and ran to open the door. He was almost blinded by the row of people outside. Eunuch Chen held a long list and stood at the door of Prince Giant Pain's mansion with a fierce face. He said loudly, "Debt collectors?" The old steward's eyes twitched. He heard that Prince Giant Pain's mansion owed a huge debt yesterday. However, he didn't expect that the people from the Eastern Palace were so immoral. They came early in the morning. At this time, the officials were already preparing to go to court. Prince Giant Pain's mansion was a first-rank mansion where the nobles and prime ministers lived. The left and right residences were either rich or noble. For example, Prince Lin Chuan's mansion was next to it. On the other side was Prime Minister Gao's mansion. Thus, the officials attending court all saw this scene. The Eastern Palace's debt collectors line up in front of Prince Giant Pain's mansion like a long dragon. There were at least a few dozen people. There were people pushing carts, people carrying cloth bags, and people pulling carriages. The line stretched to the corner of Prince Kang's mansion. Everyone was dumbfounded. Prince Kang didn't know what was going on and even ran over to take a look. Seeing this, he almost fell off his horse with laughter. He saw a fat eunuch in his 40s with a white face and no beard. He dragged a list on the ground and said loudly, "Debt collectors." Clang. This time, there was even music. A little eunuch at the back held a copper gong. Every time the eunuch in front yelled, he would hit it. Prince Kang laughed heartily, thinking to himself that these two little brats were really mean enough. Prime Minister Gao, who was pretending to be calm, quickly walked over from his house's door with his mouth twitching. The old Prince Giant Pain rolled out like a ball, so angry that his face was distorted. He pointed at Eunuch Chen and said in a trembling voice, "I'm here to collect the debt." Eunuch Chen repeated. The little eunuch at the back very responsibly hit him again. The sound was so loud that Prince Giant Pain's ears. The King of Giant Pain was so angry that his entire body was trembling. His finger trembled as he pointed at Eunuch Chen. He took a few deep breaths before he finally calmed down. Scram. This servant greets Prince Giant Pain. That won't do. This servant's Her Majesty's Her Majesty's Her Majesty's Majesty's. This is, Os Tuz's Ah. Everyone looked up at the sky, speechless. Then, they thought to themselves, it seems that the people from the Eastern Palace are not to be trifled with. In the future, we have to be careful when dealing with the Crown Prince. Prince Giant Pain's fingers trembled for a while. He snatched the list and stuffed it into his mouth. The old steward at the back was stunned. He quickly went up to snatch it while shouting, "Prince, Prince, Prince, don't take things too hard. Eunuch Chen calmly took out a complete list from his sleeve and said mildly, our crown prince consort said that His Highness has a fetish for eating paper. Chapter 2596. In order to prevent the prince from accidentally eating the list, our family's crown princess gave this servant more than a dozen identical lists, so the prince can eat as much as he wants. When you're full, there's no need for breakfast. Presumably, in the next few years, your residence's expenses, TSK, should be a bit of a problem. Good, eating paper doesn't consume spirit coins. Prince Kong was about to go crazy with laughter as he watched from the side. When the Prince of Giant Pain saw this, he hurriedly scrambled forward and hugged one of the stallion's hooves, wailing, Big brother, you have to save me, big brother. Big brother, younger brother can't live anymore. Prince Kong, your sister, I saw a troublesome matter while watching the show. Big brother, the Eastern Palace is too much, big brother. Big brother, you must save younger brother from this disaster. One of Prince Kang's stallion's legs was hugged by this guy, unable to move. He couldn't help but say helplessly, Giant Pain, get up first. No way, younger brother can't live anymore. Big brother, second brother also helped me with half of it, why don't you help me a little too? Prince Kong, who the hell did he offend? He was being forced to help early in the morning. I've been tight on cash recently. Prince Kong hurriedly said, since Her Majesty has already helped you, then you can slowly pay out the other half. How about this? I'll discuss with the Crown Princess and let you pay these compensations in installments. Give you some buffer time. The Prince of Giant Pain painfully wiped his tears. Big brother, that Crown Princess is a devil who eats people without spitting out the bones. Don't discuss with her, she won't listen to you. Since that's the case, why don't you just give the Crown Princess a deadline of 3 days? Tighten your belt, gather these things in 3 days, and quickly throw them to the Eastern Palace to send her away, wouldn't that be enough? Otherwise, do you still have to listen to the Eastern Palace's people shouting by imperial decree every day? The Prince of Giant Pain sobbed. At the side, Prime Minister Gao simply couldn't bear to watch. The corner of his mouth twitched as he glanced at the two-faced Prince Kong. With the Prince of Giant Pain's IQ, he shouldn't compare with Prince Kang's nagging. It only took 3 minutes for Prince Kong to get the support that the King of Giant Pain wanted. Prince Kong even gave Prince Giant Pain advice. Wasn't this a joke? Your Highness, it's almost time. Let's hurry to Lusheng's sect. Right. Prince Kong patted his younger brother's head and said sympathetically, Giant Pain, don't worry. Even if he couldn't live on, there was still the arch. Even if that's not enough, I can still go to Linchuan Prince's mansion next door. Official Gao suppressed his laughter and comforted him with a serious expression, Your Highness, don't worry. The great emperor will definitely not let you live. The Prince of Giant Pain wept to the heavens, wiped his tears, and got out of the carriage. After the court session, the eunuch beside the great emperor asked, Is there anything else you would like to say? The King of Giant Pain, in front of all the nobles with ranks, threw himself onto the floor and cried out, Your Majesty! Early in the morning, the Crown Princess of the Eastern Palace arrived at the entrance of my residence with a cart. She kept saying that she was here to collect the debt. Does this subject brother still want to live? The nobles instantly didn't know whether to laugh or cry. How many years had it been since they saw the King of Giant Pain wailing in front of the court? An old imperial censor walked out from the left row and said with a face full of righteousness, reporting to the great emperor, collecting the debt is a matter of course. This old subject thinks that the Eastern Palace's way of doing things is not wrong. Chapter 2597. Everyone looked at Imperial Censor Wang, dumbfounded. This was an old fogey who was notoriously difficult to deal with. He usually disliked people who challenged the laws of the country. Logically speaking, the Eastern Palace's actions were really too much. Who the hell would send people to someone else's door before morning court and beat drums and gongs to collect debts? The corners of the emperor's eyes twitched silently, but no subtle changes could be seen on his expressionless face. However, eunuch who was standing at the side, was too familiar with the emperor. Even the slightest change could be seen by him. Eunuch who knew that the emperor's heart must be crumbling at this moment. 4 or 5 old imperial censors walked out one after another and cupped their hands at the emperor righteously. This subject agrees. Seconded. It's absolutely reasonable and legal for the Eastern Palace to collect debts. Seconded. There's nothing wrong with saying that it's an imperial decree to collect debts. The king of Giant Pain is making a mountain out of a molehill. This is a bit wrong. The corners of Prime Minister Gao's mouth twitched wildly, and he looked at the old imperial censors as if they were monsters. These imperial censors were usually very self-righteous and had high standards. Normally, they wouldn't wallow in the mire with others at all. But this time, why were they so firmly on the Eastern Palace's side? It was really strange. Logically speaking, the Crown Prince had just returned, and the Emperor had let him temporarily familiarize himself with the affairs of the Eastern Palace. The Crown Prince usually stayed in the Eastern Palace and didn't come out. When did he have such a good relationship with these old imperial censors? The King of Giant Pain looked angrily at the old men and cursed in his heart. In his opinion, these old men must have been scared out of their wits by the scene of the young couple in the imperial study yesterday. That was why they were so determined to stand on the Eastern Palace's side today. A bunch of old sons of bitches. They were simply deranged and completely unreasonable. The King of Giant Pain was so angry that he wanted to howl at the Emperor again, but the Emperor waved his hand at him. All right, go back early today and prepare the compensation. Hand it over to the Eastern Palace as soon as possible, so that the Crown Princess doesn't send people to ask for it early every morning. Was this his real brother? Absolutely not. After court, the Emperor returned to his Zenith Hall with a sour expression and waved his hand at the air. A man in black appeared beside him like a ghost and bowed respectfully. Your Majesty, what are your orders? Go and find out what that little bastard did last night. In less than an hour, a concise record was placed in front of the great Emperor. As expected, the little brat had gone to chat with a few of the censors in the middle of the night. The Emperor was simply amused. The little brat was really prepared for a rainy day. He had predicted that the Prince of Giant Pain would make such a move this morning, so he had already gotten the few imperial censors to stand on his side. The great Emperor didn't know whether to laugh or be angry, but there was an inexplicable smile on his face. He would definitely be defeated. The next day, the King of Giant Pain's estate collected 1/3 of the compensation and handed it over to the Eastern Palace. They even wrote a guarantee that the remaining goods would be handed over within 7 days. Only then did the Crown Princess withdraw the team that was ordered to collect the debt and head to the Shur, Gu, and Long families to collect the debt. Chapter 2598. Compared to the other family's gloom, the Mu family had also sunk into deep worry. Ever since the Emperor's strange imperial edict came down, the Mu family head had sent out Mu Xingqian to actively contact the Crown Princess. However, this was already the 3rd day. For 3 whole days, the Crown Princess had yet to show her face. Even so, the entire capital was filled with legends about the Crown Princess. The matter of collecting debts by imperial edict was no longer just circulating in the upper circles. This was already known by the streets and alleys. Everyone's expression changed at the mention of the Crown Princess in their hearts. The Crown Princess had already been equated with a little monster. The Mu family was somewhat unable to restrain themselves and held an elder-level high-level meeting early in the morning. The seated elders couldn't help but ask Mu Xingqian, who was sitting in the first seat below the head seat, Xingqian, what's your sister's opinion now? Does she have any requests? Just agree to them first. Let her return to our Mu family first. Mu Xingqian coldly lowered his eyes. I can't see her at all. She probably doesn't want to see anyone from the Mu family at all. How can that be? A tall and thin elder said with a sullen face. If she's really our Mu family's descendant, how can she not wish to return to our family? Unless there's a problem with her bloodline. Mu Xingqian abruptly opened his eyes and coldly looked at that elder. I know best whether she's my sister or not. You guys don't understand this feeling of bloodline fusion at all. Xingqian, don't get angry. Elder Qing was just speaking without thinking. Mu Xingchen restrained the sharpness in his eyes and coldly snorted. At this moment, the door to the side room was pushed open, and Mu Jingfeng and Mu Jingrui walked in first. Behind them were the second, third, Mu Jingxing, third, fourth, Mu Jingshao, fifth, and sixth, Mu Jingshua. The Mu family's 7 sons were all present. These people could be considered to represent the Mu family's core. Why is the atmosphere so gloomy? You're still worrying about the crown princess's matter. Sixth, Mu Jingshua, giggled. Don't worry, if she's our Mu family's child, she'll return sooner or later. Sooner or later. Today is the 3rd day of the deadline given by the great emperor. Elder Qing snapped. Mu Jingshua shrugged. So what? Let Xingchen make another trip. Maybe the young lady will be willing to come back after her anger subsides. But it's not that I want to scold you. How could you be so blind as to bring back a fake? Mu Jingzhuang said with a grin. This is mainly boss's fault. Look at that concubine in his backyard. What was she doing? If you ask me, I think it's better to divorce this concubine mother so that she won't be up to no good all day long. Mu Xingchen looked down coldly. Mu Jingfeng coldly waved his hand, interrupting sixth brother's chatter. He turned to look at Mu Xingchen and said, Go ask her what her conditions are for her to come back. Mu Xingchen couldn't help but sneer. He looked up at his father with ridicule. If the Mu family still has this attitude, I can guarantee that she won't come back. Mu Jingfeng silently looked at his son. There's a reason why I did this. Looking at his son's eyes, Mu Jingfeng already understood that his son had discovered that his original intention was to not bring Mu Qiao, this child, home. I think you must have misunderstood me. I didn't misunderstand. You already knew that concubine sure brought back a fake. Chapter 2599. You'd rather raise a fake than bring my biological sister home. Mu Xingchen clenched his fists tightly. I'm not willing to listen to your explanation right now. Whether you're happy or not, that's the truth. Mu Jingfeng, is what Xingchen said true? A handsome man in his 30s, dressed in white, coldly asked. Jingyuan, don't be agitated. Listen to what eldest has to say. The second brother, Mu Jingxing, hurriedly pulled his third brother back. Mu Jingfeng, you're truly heartless. But since you didn't want to bring the child back then, don't bring her back now. Mu Jingyuan sneered. A third, what are you saying? If we don't bring her back, are we waiting for the emperor to execute our entire family? While everyone was discussing animatedly, Mu Jingfeng coldly shouted, All of you, shut up. Xingchen, go to the Eastern Palace and request to see the Crown Princess again until she sees you. It's fine even if you want me to sleep at the palace's entrance, Mu Xingchen coldly said. Mu Xingchen said coldly, the problem is, even if you sleep there, on the street, she won't even look at you when she passes by. Everyone's lips twitched as they turned to Mu Jingfeng in confusion. Eldest's relationship with this daughter was so terrible. Xingchen, I'll go with you, Mu Jingyuan said. She wanted to see that child. She really wanted to see her. I'll go too, Mu Jingxing also said. It's always good to have more people to persuade her. If she's really our Mu family's child, she must have suffered a lot after wandering outside for so many years. Mu Jingfeng coldly swept a glance at his younger brothers. Up to you. As long as you bring her back and pass the bloodline talisman's test, she can naturally enter the Mu family's genealogy. The cup in Mu Jingyuan's hand shattered with a bang. He coldly looked at his eldest brother, Mu Jingfeng, and said, Don't worry. Even if you don't want this daughter, I, as her third uncle, will take care of her. Third uncle. Mu Xingchen stood up as well, too lazy to say another word to Mu Jingfeng. Let's go. The little crown princess listened to Eunuch Chen report how many things were brought back and how much was left. He flipped through the medical book page by page. At this time, Kai Xiu hurriedly came in and reported, Crown Princess, the young master of the Mu family has come to see you again. But this time, there seemed to be 2 other members of the Mu family. Arbor looked indifferent. He flipped a page and asked, Where's my husband? The Crown Prince was called to the extreme hall by His Majesty. I'm afraid he won't be back before dinner. Oh. Arbor responded and put the medical book back into his inner world. He then said to Kai Xiu, Put it on the carriage, I'm going out. Where are we going, Crown Princess? The Crown Princess's lips curled into a cold smile. To collect a debt. Kai Shio couldn't help but be stunned. Over the past few days, collecting debts had become a compulsory course for everyone in the Eastern Palace. Everyone was relishing in the business of collecting debts. Even some palace maids and eunuchs were caught by the people in the accounting room to count things and calculate the accounts. However, the Crown Princess had never personally left the palace to collect debts. Where are we going this time? Kai Shio didn't say much and instructed the servants to prepare the carriage. She also prepared a small stove for the Crown Princess to warm her hands and feet. She then put on a thick cloak and followed the Crown Princess into the carriage. The carriage left Lishan Gate and headed toward Changle Main Street. After Arbor gave an address, the carriage went straight there. Chapter 2600. The horse carriage stopped at the entrance of Despondent Pavilion. Arbor walked down from the horse carriage and said to the heir behind him, "Send someone to guard the entrance and exit of this place." After Tong's figure flashed, he immediately led his men to do as the Crown Princess instructed. Bang! Manager Chen looked at a certain little Crown Princess who kicked the door open with a stupefied expression, and his entire face was slightly distorted. This Crown Princess was almost becoming his nightmare. Why did he feel that her aura was so terrifying when she returned? "Your Highness, Crown Princess. Why are you here?" Manager He stepped forward with a fawning smile and bowed obsequiously for a while. "What orders does the Crown Princess have for this little one?" "This little one will immediately go and arrange a private room for you." "No need." The little Crown Princess waved her small hand and glanced at him coldly. "Eunuch Chen." Eunuch Chen stepped forward eagerly and slapped a piece of paper on Manager He's face. "Compensate according to the list. If not, ask your head steward who has a say here to come out." Manager He was even more stupefied. He grabbed the list and looked at it, and his hands couldn't help but tremble slightly. "What are you trembling for?" Eunuch Chen couldn't help but shout at him. "Look at you, just this little thing and you're scared to this extent? What else can he do? So little, you're not someone who can do big things?" Manager He cried with a long face. "This eunuch, Crown Princess, why do you want our Despondent Pavilion to compensate?" He was really wronged. That day, the Crown Princess spent so much in Despondent Pavilion and ordered so many dishes. If they were to settle the bill, there should be at least 1,000 spirit coins. But in the end, not only did the Crown Princess not pay a single cent, but she also blew up his private room into smithereens. Just the repair costs alone cost him a few thousand spirit coins. Why the hell did he want Despondent Pavilion to compensate now? Was there any justice in this day and age? You're not convinced? Tell those who can make decisions to come out and speak. This was the first thing Mu Xingchen, Mu Jingxing, and Mu Jingyuan saw when they walked in. The little Crown Princess was sitting on an armchair, looking coldly at the steward in front of her. It was such a cold day, but the manager was sweating profusely. It was obvious that he was terrified. It was obvious how frightened he was by the little Crown Princess. Mu Xingchen hurried forward and called out, "Jojo?" He had not seen the little Crown Princess come out of the Eastern Palace for several days. Now that he finally saw her, he felt the need to communicate more with her. Mu Jingyuan and Mu Jingxing, on the other hand, stood at the door and sized up the little girl. A hint of excitement flashed in Mu Jingyuan's eyes as he hurriedly stepped forward and said, You're Jojo, sister-in-law's daughter. Where's sister-in-law? Where's your mother?" Arbor faintly glanced at the man and saw that he looked to be in his 30s. He inherited the Mu family's unique handsomeness and was dressed in white, elegant, and otherworldly. "For you?" Arbor frowned. Ever since she came into contact with the Mu family, no one mentioned her mother, Long Chuyun. Except for this man in white, who asked about her mother as soon as they met. The concern in his words did not seem to be fake. But so what? Arbor sneered in her heart. "My mother has long turned into a pile of dirt and is no longer in this world. It's completely meaningless for him to express his condolences now. 10 chapters have ended. The author is going to be busy this week. I'll persist for another day tomorrow." Chapter 2601. Your Mu family came at the right time, Arbor said coldly, directly taking the list from Eunuch Chen's hands and flinging it in front of Mu Xingchen and the others. The Mu family has a large business, so you should be able to gather the things immediately. In the evening, I'll send someone to collect them. Don't leave out a single thing on the list. Otherwise, I'll teach you a lesson. After saying that, he jumped down from the armchair and walked towards the door with small steps. Mu Jingxing and Mu Jingyuan finally witnessed the little girl's indifference for the first time. Recalling Mu Xingchen's previous words, they couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Sure enough, this was the Mu family. Even if they were lying on the streets, she wouldn't give them a second glance. Jojo, can we have a good talk? Mu Xingchen glanced bitterly at the little girl and reached out to block her path. Arbor stopped in his tracks, his expression calm as he looked at Mu Xingchen as if he was looking at an ordinary stranger. The Emperor's decree, that's what I meant. Arbor openly admitted it, a faint trace of coldness flitting through the depths of his eyes. I want your Mu family to be in a terrible fix, and I want you to be unable to live a good life. Mu Jingxing glanced speechlessly at the little girl. Jojo, right? Mu Jingxing coughed lightly and said, I'm your second uncle, Mu Jingxing. This is your third uncle, Mu Jingyuan. Arbor glanced indifferently at the two. He had no intention of greeting them, nor did he express much welcome. Mu Jingyuan stepped forward and said, Jojo, how are you doing on Sikong planet? How is eldest sister-in-law now? Arbor looked deeply at him. From earlier until now, this person didn't seem to be bothered by the Mu family's imperial decree at all. Instead, he kept asking about her own situation. I'm useless. I couldn't find you and your mother all these years. Mu Jingyuan hurriedly said, Third uncle didn't know that you and your mother would actually run to a lower star domain like Sikong planet. Arbor raised his hand to stop him from speaking. The past is the past. There's no use in saying this now. Yes. Mu Jingyuan hurriedly nodded and said, Jojo, don't come back if you don't want to. If you need anything, just tell third uncle. The 3. Mu Jingxing was even more speechless. Was this old third a fool? If Mu Qiao, this little girl, did not return to the Mu family, would the great emperor let their family off? He was now thinking the same thing as the elders. They all felt that the great emperor had purposely issued this decree. The reason must be that if the crown princess was just a small village girl who came out of a small mountain village on Sikong planet, then her status was definitely a little low. If the crown princess had the Mu family as her backing, then it was still acceptable in front of the various aristocratic families and courtiers. After all, by then, the crown princess would also have the background of a noble lady. The great emperor was forcing the Mu clan to admit it. Even if they didn't want to, they had to admit this little girl. How would Mu Jingxing know that the great emperor was forcing them? It was clearly the couple who forced him to issue this nonsensical imperial edict. If the great emperor knew what Mu Jingxing was thinking, he would definitely laugh at him. Mu Jingxing stepped forward and said to Arbor, Jojo, don't be willful anymore. Come back with us. I know that the matter of concubineship bringing back the fake goods previously made you very unhappy. But this matter has been completely resolved now. Chapter 2602. Our Mu family has already officially announced this to the world, Mu Jingxing said with a smile. You don't have to worry about that fake ruining your reputation. You can rest assured about this. Arbor coldly glanced at him. It's not impossible for me to return. Mu Jingxing was slightly delighted when he heard this, and he immediately revealed a smile. Jojo, go ahead. A wooden smile slid across Arbor's lips, as if a cut had been made on a piece of wood. There wasn't a trace of a smile in his eyes, and it was rather frightening to look at. Mu Jingxing's gaze hardened, and his heart subconsciously sank. Have your Mu family's current madam lead eldest miss and all the Mu family's womenfolk, starting from your Mu residents, kowtow 3 times and kowtow 9 times, then kneel and welcome my mother at Lixing Gates. The Mu estate will open its main doors to welcome me and my mother. Also, open the ancestral hall for me. You don't need to know why, just do as I say. This is my request. If you can do it, I'll return. If you can't, your entire family can just wait for death. Don't think that the great emperor is joking. Your heads are all hanging there. If you can't do it, I'll watch you, one by one, die. Arbor coldly said these words. That voice was like being fished up from the depths of the Yellow Springs, so cold that it sent chills down one's spine. It was so serene that it made one shiver uncontrollably. Mu Jingxing couldn't help but rage in his eyes. Don't talk nonsense with me. I also don't want to listen to your nonsense. Arbor coldly waved his hand and turned to walk out the door. These are my conditions. Do you want pride or your life? Choose for yourself. Mu Jingxing's anger burst forth. At this moment, he truly understood how his eldest brother, Mu Jingfeng, felt when he didn't want to acknowledge this daughter. If it were him, he also didn't want to acknowledge her. How could there be such an infuriating person? Second uncle. Mu Xingchen grabbed his arm, calming him down. When he looked up again, he saw that the little girl had already drifted out the door and left. Otherwise, don't blame me for sending the purple forest guard to your door to take it. Mu Jingxing was so angry that his entire body was trembling. He glanced at Old Third, who was standing at the side, and could not help but say angrily, You're still laughing. What are you laughing at? If sister-in-law had such a temper back then, she wouldn't have been so angry that she left home, right? Mu Xingchen frowned and said, Third uncle, she chose to leave on her own. The Mu family didn't force her. Mu Jingyuan shook his head and glanced at Mu Xingchen. You believe what your father says? Don't you know your father's attitude towards Jojo now? How much credibility do you think his words have? Third brother. Mu Jingxing said angrily, no matter what, eldest brother is still eldest brother. He's the head of the Mu family. Pay attention to your words and attitude. Mu Jingyuan sneered and didn't reply. He flicked his sleeves and left as well. Seeing his attitude, Mu Jingxing was so angry that he stomped his feet. He turned to Mu Xingchen and asked, Xingchen, what should we do about this? I think you're serious. Of course I know she's serious. This disobedient and unfilial thing. What she meant was that she wanted your mother to bring your younger sister, as well as the entire family of womenfolk, and go to Luxing men to pick them up. What an... Mu Jingxing was furious. This concerns our entire Mu family's reputation. I won't agree to this. Mu Xingchen laughed self-mockingly. You won't agree? If you don't agree, then go die. Didn't she say so? Chapter 2603. Mu Jingxing was momentarily at a loss for words as he glared at Mu Xingchen. Xingchen, can't you go and persuade her? Did you see her look at me just now? Did she want to talk to me? Mu Xingchen hung his head dejectedly and walked out dejectedly. Let's go back first. We still have to gather those supplies first. What? Mu Jingxing jumped out at once and picked up the list on the floor, almost smashing it to pieces with a slap. Mu Xingchen snatched it over and held it in his hand. I don't think little sister is just joking. She'll really send someone to collect the supplies at 10 o'clock in the evening. If you don't want the Mu family to lose even more face, then do it. So many things. On what basis? Mu Jingxing originally came with his third brother, Mu Jingyuan, to build a good relationship with Arbor, but who knew that this fellow would be so infuriating? At this moment, Mu Jingxing was already fuming with anger. His initial plan to get along with the little lass had long been tossed out of the highest heavens. Half an hour later, the two returned to the Mu family, presented the list, and recounted the matter. Of course, it infuriated all the elders. The Mu family's fifth son, Mu Jingyang, was the most impatient. He slammed the table and angrily said, I'll go slaughter this rebellious little bastard. She actually dares to make such a request? Fifth uncle, if you hurt a hair on my sister's head, I won't let you off. Mu Xingchen angrily said. Mu Jingyang resentfully smacked his lips. I was just saying. Why are you so anxious with me? You can't even say it? Mu Xingchen was furious. Mu Jingyang pursed his lips and angrily sat back down. Mu Jingfeng silently sat at the head of the table and did not speak for a long time. Family head will do whatever you say. You definitely can't agree to this matter. On what basis should Madam bring eldest Miss to welcome her with 3 kneels and 9 kowtows? Eldest Miss is one of the most outstanding talisman masters in our Mu family's younger generation. She can't be humiliated like this. Right? Everyone discussed animatedly, and for a moment, they were all filled with righteous indignation. Mu Xingchen sneered, "Sure, but the result is death." With Mu Xingchen's words, everyone quieted down. He also thought of the great emperor's imperial edict. It was written clearly on the imperial edict that if they did not bring this little ancestor back within 5 days and prove her identity to the world, their entire family would be executed. Everyone took a deep breath and sighed heavily. They all turned their eyes to Patriarch Mu. The Mu family head was silent for a while before he said, "First, prepare all the materials on the list." Everyone felt their teeth ache when they heard this. Elder Qin couldn't help but say angrily, "Patriarch, if we take out all the materials on this list, 1/5 of the entire Mu family's property will be taken out. Just these resources are already 1/5 of the total?" Mu Jingyuan couldn't help but mock. Then the entire Mu family, the accumulation of thousands of years of aristocratic families, is too cheap. Elder Qing's face reddened, and he was at a loss for words. This slap to the face was really quite a slap. Mu Jingyuan coldly said, "You can't bear to take out just these few materials? Jojo has been wandering outside for so many years, not having enough to eat or wear. Who knows what kind of life the mother and daughter have been living? I think just these are really too little." Chapter 2604. Mu Jingyuan, are you crazy? Fifth Mu Jingyang said angrily, "Our Mu family is so big. It's not like you don't know how many cultivation resources are distributed to each disciple in the family? Taking out so much at once, and it's only for a little girl. Who can accept that?" Mu Jingyuan sneered. "Then why don't you give it to her? You're afraid that the Purple Forest Guard will personally come to take it. What's the use of saying all this nonsense?" Mu Jingyang was so angry that smoke was coming out of his nostrils. He pointed at Mu Jingyuan and said, "Yut," for a long time before resentfully flinging his hand down. "All right, stop arguing." Mu Jingfeng said calmly, "Go and prepare these resources. Put them at the door and wait for her to take them." Can the Mu family afford to give these things back? Everyone felt like vomiting blood in their hearts. Elder Qing was even more unconvinced. I'd like to know why the Mu family is compensating her. Isn't it because of yesterday's incident at Despondent Pavilion? Did those blind brats from the Long family, Gu family, and Shi family offend her and His Highness the Crown Prince? These families have all given compensation to each of them. As for our Mu family, she said that our Mu family's management was chaotic and offended her, so she insisted that we compensate. The Long family? The Long family also gave compensation? Mu Jingyang asked in astonishment. Isn't the Long family her maternal family? What kind of maternal family is that? Mu Jingyuan sneered coldly. That family is merely a side branch of the Long family. It has nothing to do with sister-in-law. Moreover, I don't believe that they didn't add fuel to the fire behind the scenes back then. Jingyuan, don't spout nonsense. Mu Jingfeng coldly glanced at Mu Jingyuan. Back then, your sister-in-law insisted on leaving. It has nothing to do with us. Why did sister-in-law leave? Don't you know? Mu Jingyuan glared at Mu Jingfeng mockingly. If you didn't mix around with that woman, Jingyuan. Mu Jingfeng glared at him coldly. The latter sneered and stood up to walk out the door. Third brother Yen, third brother. Sixth brother Mu Jingshua smiled awkwardly at everyone. He pointed outside and said, "I'll go persuade him." Then he ran out like a wisp of smoke. This third bro is getting more and more outrageous. Mu Jingyang snorted. Mu Jingfeng's gaze was calm, as though he was not affected by this matter at all. He calmly said, "Fourth, I'll leave the matter of gathering and preparing the supplies to you. Make sure it's done before nightfall." "Yes, big brother." Mu Jingshao nodded and did not express any opinion. In any case, he just had to follow his boss's orders. As for the rest, it was not something that a bastard like him could control. "Big brother, That girl Mu Qiao said to have sister-in-law bring eldest niece along to kneel 3 times and kowtow 9 times? Mu Jingxing looked awkwardly at his eldest brother, Mu Jingfeng. He always felt that this matter had evolved to become the first branch's family affair. Don't bother about it. How can we not care? Mu Jingyang panicked again. Big brother, it's not that I want to say this, but that daughter of yours who was left outside is very formidable. It doesn't feel like she's lying. If we don't make sister-in-law and eldest niece kneel, I feel like she won't let this matter rest. Mu Jingfeng coldly said, Is she worthy? After all, she's a crown princess now. Worthy, she can be considered worthy. Chapter 2605. Mu Jingfeng waved his hand, looking a little tired as he dismissed the crowd. Elder Qing and the rest still wanted to persuade him, but when they saw his cold gaze, they could not help but sigh and shrink their necks as they walked out. Xingchen, you stay. Mu Xingchen sat in front of him and did not speak for a long time. Mu Jingfeng looked at him and asked, Xingchen, do you think she's doing the right thing? Although your mother isn't your biological mother, she painstakingly raised you all these years. When did she not do her best to take care of you when you were sick and bedridden? There's also your sister Xian. She respects you the most. Mu Xingchen remained silent. I know you've always been aloof, but you're not someone who can't tell good from bad. You must be able to feel that your mother and sister treat you with sincerity, don't you? Father, what are you trying to say? Go and persuade your sister. I'm willing to accept her home. Mu Jingfeng pinched the space between his brows, looking exhausted. But there's no need for 3 kowtows and 9 kowtows. She's so young. How can she receive so many bows from the Mu family's elders? There are more than 100 womenfolk in the Mu family. Do you want her grandmother to kneel as well? Mu Xingchen remained silent. Father, if the Mu family didn't have such an attitude from the start, things wouldn't have come to this. If the Mu family didn't bring that impostor home from the start, she wouldn't have been completely enraged. Father, don't you think it's hard for you to absolve yourself of the blame now that things have come to this? Mu Jingfeng's eyes finally moved. He looked up and coldly gazed at his son. Xingchen, you were born and raised in this family. Your achievements today are inseparable from the Mu family's nurturing. You should also know that if this family is really suppressed by that rebellious daughter, the entire family and thousands of family members will be implicated. Mu Xingchen looked at him coldly, not saying a word or expressing any opinion. Father, do you think my words will be of any use? How is it useless? You're siblings and are connected by blood. You said yourself that you'll feel the resonance of your bloodline when you walk to her side. Mu Xingchen sneered mockingly, so what? In her eyes, I might not even be as good as a dog on the street. Xingchen. Mu Jingfeng slammed the table in anger. Why do you have to belittle yourself like this? What I said is the truth. Mu Xingchen only felt extremely bitter in his heart. You didn't see her expression when she said those words to us in Despondent Pavilion. She said that it's up to us to choose whether we want pride or our lives. She'll be waiting to see us die one by one. Unfilial daughter. Mu Jingfeng finally showed his anger. He slammed the table heavily, and the teacup on the table jumped up with a kick sound. Mu Xingchen looked coldly at his father and did not continue speaking. From a moment ago until now, he was like a wandering soul, wandering the world. Was he sad? She was heartbroken, all right? His heart was so uncomfortable that it felt like someone was using a blunt knife to cut it bit by bit. He had the illusion that he wanted to cry, but he couldn't. She was his only sister in the world, who was related to him by blood. Yet she hated their family to the bone. Mu Xingchen walked out of the door in a daze. He did not know when, but his extremely cold tears had fallen. Chapter 2606. After strolling around Changle Boulevard, Xiao Mu bought a few bits and pieces of snacks. When she returned to Lushan Gate, she saw the crown prince galloping out on a fast horse. The little fellow hastily poked her head out of the carriage and waved at him. Lien? Emo Lien had already seen her carriage. She hastily dismounted and quickly jumped into the carriage. Where did you run off to? Prince Mo pulled her over with a displeased expression and rubbed her head. His father had caught him and given him a lecture. When he finally managed to break free and return to the Eastern Palace, he discovered that his wife had disappeared. The Crown Prince immediately thought of the rainbow flowers that filled the entire building in spring. He felt that the little girl must have gone to Jade Tripod Market to take a look out of curiosity. After all, the little girl did show a trace of interest that night, didn't she? Where did she go? Jojo. To collect debts. Arbor took out a list from his sleeve and flung it out for the Crown Prince to see. Look, this is the compensation I asked the Mu family for. I had them prepare it before evening. Mo Lien's mouth twitched as she flipped through the list. There were all sorts of medicinal pills and spirit tools on this list. Sir Jojo had even extorted a batch of talismans from them. Actually, she didn't lack any of these things. What she wanted was to make the Mu family vomit blood. When we bring these things back, reward them to Hui Feng and Tong. They've been working quite hard recently. Mo Lien couldn't help but laugh. She nodded and said, whatever Jojo said was good. If these resources were rewarded to Hui Feng and the others, they would probably be happy for several days. After all, just the medicinal pills for cultivation alone would be enough for them to eat for a while. We have a lot of people to take care of. If we distribute the Mu family's compensation, there won't be much left in everyone's hands. Arbor said in all seriousness, we still have to earn more compensation. Mo Lien almost died from laughter. She nodded when she heard that. Jojo is so smart. A certain person nodded in agreement. She also felt that her trick of getting something for nothing was pretty good. Jojo. Mo Lien reached out and hugged her. Since we're out, why don't we go out for dinner? All right. I heard that there's a famous Kaidai veranda in your sovereign capital. Do you want to try it? All right. Mo Lien squeezed her little hand and had the coachman turn around, heading towards Kaidai Pavilion. When it came to eating, Arbor was quite happy. Eating is a must in life. She just didn't know if the famous Kaidai veranda, which was the talk of the town in the imperial capital, was as delicious as its name implied. When the two of them arrived at the entrance of Kaidai Pavilion, they saw a long queue in front of the shop. The little fellow got out of the car curiously and looked around. Then he took Mo Lien's hand and walked towards the door. There was a small service counter at the entrance of Kaidai Pavilion. Two smiling women stood in front of it. When they saw the guests, they bowed and said, "How many guests are there?" "Two. You'll have to wait for a while. Take your number plate and have a seat over there. There are some refreshments there for everyone." The little girl looked curious. "Is your business that good? Could all of these people be fake?" It wasn't even time for lunch yet. Why was there such a long queue at the entrance? Looking at the other restaurants, none of them had such good business. This was simply too rare. The receptionist smiled and said, "Our Kaidai veranda is very different from other restaurants." Chapter 2607. Our main line this winter is growing vegetables and beautifying dishes. These dishes can't be found in restaurants or tea houses outside. Jojo replied with an "oh" and immediately felt that this restaurant was a bit magical. They actually placed many tables and chairs outside the door for the people in line to rest and eat some fruits and snacks. There were indeed quite a number of people gathered here. "Do we have to wait?" Mo Lien pulled her to her side and asked. The little fellow's eyes darted around before she shook her head and said, "No. No matter how good the dishes were, they weren't worth her and the Crown Prince waiting here for half a day after waiting in such a long line." She immediately felt that her interest was waning. The Crown Prince nodded. "Then let's go eat somewhere else." Arbor replied with an and turned around with Prince Mo leading her. When the two were walking towards the carriage, they saw a few familiar faces walking over. Oh, did the Mu family go on a trip together today? They had just sent away a group when another group came over. Of course, it looked like the Mu family was also heading to Kaidai restaurant to eat, so they probably bumped into each other by coincidence. Mu Rochuan was also stunned when she saw Arbor. Before she could speak, Mu Rian beside her jumped up like a hedgehog. "Why are you here?" Mu Rian was too familiar with this stoic-faced young lady. So familiar that she couldn't deny it even if she wanted to. She still remembered the humiliation she suffered on the Langfang boat. Just thinking about it made her angry. A sinister glint surfaced in Mu Rian's eyes as she stared fixedly at Arbor's face. If it weren't for her eldest sister stopping her with a cold expression, Mu Rian would have long rushed up with the servants to beat up that stoic-faced young lady. She still remembered that her eldest brother was defeated by this stoic-faced young lady. Her eldest brother was even slapped by this damned stoic-faced young lady. Who did she think she was to dare lay a hand on the Mu family? Previously at Langfang, she couldn't kill her alone. Now that they were in the imperial capital, she had the Mu family as her powerful backing. Wasn't it a simple matter to kill this little bitch with a single sentence? Eldest miss, second miss, why did you stop here and not leave? A smiling young man ran over. He seemed to be a disciple of the Mu clan. His attitude towards the two of them was very respectful. Mu He hit her. Mu Ro Yen raised her chin and scolded. The youth named Mu He was stunned. He turned to look at the stoic face, but before he could do anything, he was stopped by Mu Roxuan's indifferent shout. Stop it? Mu Ro Xian glared at Mu Ro Yen. Don't go around causing trouble. Don't forget what we are here for. Mu Ro Yan's arrogance instantly soared. Yes, I'm accompanying Big Sister to wait for the invitation today. As he spoke, the corners of his mouth curled up and he looked towards Arbor with a mocking sneer. My elder sister is going to become a student of the royal school this spring. Mu Ro Yen didn't deliberately lower her voice, so everyone around them heard it. At this moment, they were in an uproar and looked at the sisters with envy. Mu Ro Yen felt honored, as if the person who received the invitation to the imperial school was her, Mu Ro Yen. What imperial school? Darling Qiao expressed that she had never heard of it. Mo Lien lowered her head and saw the little fellow blinking her eyes with a curious expression. Her heart softened as she raised her hand to pull her to her side and said, Don't mind it. Arbor was still curious. Is it a very powerful school? Chapter 2608. More impressive than our top-notch academy? If any of the 6 prefectures' academies were here, they would definitely be unable to resist ridiculing her. How is your lousy top-notch academy impressive? Mo Lien's lips twitched as she nodded and said, Your top-notch academy is still impressive. Darling Qiao instantly said matter-of-factly, As expected, our principal Yun Fei is still very impressive. Mo Lien. On the side, Mu Ro Yan's face contorted slightly, and she couldn't resist snickering. We've never even heard of your so-called top-notch academy. What kind of place do you think the Royal Academy is? It's the most famous academy in the 3 provinces. It was founded by the combined funds of our Divine Province, Song Province, and Ming Province. A large group of the 3 provinces' top-notch teachers are gathered inside. Also, there are countless geniuses inside. All of them are the 3 provinces' most famous geniuses. Xiao Mian expressionlessly looked at the boastful Mu Ro Yen with a stoic face. You're inside? Those geniuses are either talisman experts or top-notch cultivators. Then there are weapon and pill refinement masters. An academy where all kinds of elites gather. Mu Ro Yan's face contorted slightly. Of course I'm not inside. I freaking thought you were inside. You were blushing like a fool, but it turns out you're not inside. The little stoic speechlessly glanced at her and shooed her away like a fly. Then why are you blabbering nonsense with me? Everyone, Mu Ro Yen shrieked in exasperation, my elder sister is inside. You are you, and your elder sister is your elder sister. Arbor grumpily said, Get out of the way, a good dog doesn't block the way. Mu Ro Yen was about to go crazy from anger. She shrieked and ordered Mu He, hit her. If she dies or maims, it's on me. Mu He hesitated. Just as he was hesitating, the little girl charged over like a primitive leopard. Fuck, Mo Lien didn't even have time to hug her. The little girl shot in front of Mu Ro Yen like a cannonball. She held a washboard horizontally in her hand and slapped it heavily at Mu Ro Yan's head. Slap. Mu Ro Yen shockingly discovered that she was sent flying. Her entire body was like a piece of rotten tofu as she was sent flying and landed heavily on the ground. 2 pairs of black boots with golden threads suddenly appeared in her vision. Only then did Mu Ro Yen spit out a mouthful of blood. Her face was covered in blood as she raised her head in a sorry state. With one look, her heart was completely shattered. Wasn't this her beloved fifth young master? Why did the fifth young master suddenly appear here and see her in such a disgraceful state? Mu Ro Yen shrieked. She frantically wiped away the blood from her nose as she struggled to stand up. Fifth young master, don't look at my face, don't look. Just as Mu Ro Yen was desperately trying to cover her face, the Qin estate's fifth young master indifferently walked past her. Sorry, fifth young master didn't even look at your face. You're the only one who's talking nonsense. Mu Roxuan was so angry that her chest was about to explode. She must have been out of her mind to bring this stupid second sister to Kaidai Pavilion for a meal. She was about to faint from anger. It was one thing for her second sister to make a fool of herself, but she had also brought shame to her grandmother. She simply didn't know what to say. She couldn't win, yet she was still blindly talking nonsense. It was better for people to know their own limits. Otherwise, they would only be asking for humiliation. Chapter 2609. Mu Roxuan took a deep breath. Just as she was about to speak, she heard a low and elegant chuckle. I say, little Jojo really hasn't changed at all. Still so violent. Arbor expressionlessly looked at the grinning man who ran to him with a flourish of his sleeves. Why did someone from the Qin estate run over? How annoying. Little Jojo silently turned her head away from eldest Qin and pattered to the crown prince's side. Prince Mo restrained the smile on his lips and said to her in all seriousness, Jojo, let's go eat at the festive restaurant next door. The little fellow nodded and turned to ask Mu Roxuan, this is your Mu clan's property. Mu Roxuan didn't expect this stoic-faced girl to speak to her. After a momentary daze, she nodded. Oh. Little Jojo didn't say anything else. She turned around and saw eldest young Sir Qin approach her with a grin. Jojo, you're truly heartless. Why are you ignoring me? I don't know you at all. Mo Lien irritably pulled the little fellow to the other side and blocked eldest Qin's face with her arm. Your Highness the Crown Prince, it's not right of you to say that. Eldest young Sir Qin bit his lip pitifully. In any case, Jojo and I are old friends who came from Sikong planet together. Of course, I have to come and greet an old friend in a foreign land. Don't you think so, Jojo? Standing behind eldest young Sir Qin, the fifth young Sir revealed a trace of astonishment and asked coldly, Eldest brother, you know her? HM? Eldest young Sir Qin detected a trace of confusion in the fifth young Sir's words, so he turned to ask him, What? You also know the little stoic? Fifth young Sir Qin coldly swept the little stoic a glance and said aloofly, I don't know her. Sir Jojo was immediately a bit angry. Don't know your sister. He didn't expect that only Sir Jojo would disdain someone, but now, this youth would disdain her? This young man had a cold face and a serious expression. Just looking at him was extremely annoying. Jojo ignored him and turned to look at Mo Lien. Let's go. The Qin family is a bunch of ingrates. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have saved that fifth young master. What an ungrateful fellow. Mr. Jojo waved his hand angrily. He hooked his arm around Mo Lien's finger and walked towards the festive restaurant. She wasn't that curious about Kaidai brothel. Wasn't it the same to eat at the festive restaurant next door? Jojo, don't run. Eldest young Sir Qin hastily blocked their path with a flash and said to the Crown Prince merrily, Your Highness Crown Prince, this Qin has reserved a private room at Kaidai Pavilion. Since the two of you are so fated to meet, how about this Qin host a welcoming dinner for the two of you? The little fellow's expressionless face was taut. She originally wanted to sternly refuse. The Crown Prince raised his hand to pat her head and nodded reluctantly. All right. If it weren't for the fact that the little fellow was truly curious about this Kaidai brothel, he wouldn't have eaten with eldest young Sir Qin. Although Sir Jojo didn't say anything, his mood improved. Eldest young Sir Qin's gaze flickered, and he said with a smile, This way please. The fifth young Sir didn't say anything and silently followed behind the trio towards Kaidai brothel. He helped the disheveled Mu Ro Yen up with great difficulty. When she saw Arbor's figure walking in, she shrieked, "Who allowed her to go in? Stop her!" This lunatic dared to enter their Kaidai brothel after beating her up like this. Chapter 26:10. Ro Yen. Mu Roxuan irritably shouted at her. Mu Ro Yen turned to look at her in astonishment. "Return first." Mu Roxuan's gaze chilled, and she coldly instructed the two maidservants behind her, "You two must escort second Miss back properly." Yes, eldest Mississippi Mu Ro Yen was still unconvinced, and she stiffened her neck and shouted at Mu Roxuan, "Eldest sister, I was humiliated by that woman on the streets and suffered such serious injuries, yet you're actually making me return? No way." "Shut up." Mu Roxuan was simply about to be angered to death by this idiot. Didn't she hear that eldest young Sir Qin respectfully address him as His Highness the Crown Prince just now? How long did this Mu Ro Yen want to kick up a fuss for? Couldn't she use her brain a bit when she went out to do things? Mu Roxuan didn't want to waste any more words with her and directly waved her hand, gesturing for the two strong maidservants to pull Mu Ro Yen back to the Mu estate. Afterwards, Mu Roxuan looked up at her Kaidai veranda's gold-lettered door lintel and walked inside with light steps. Arbor ordered a table full of dishes, and after ordering, he saw the fifth young sir looking at him coldly. "You can eat so much? How did this woman develop such a temperament?" When she treated his illness back then, she swindled and cheated as much as she could. She was simply a shameless person. "You're footing the bill?" I'll pay. Eldest young Sir Qin hastily said with a smile and glanced at his younger brother. "Fifth brother, do you know each other?" If he still couldn't tell that these two people knew each other now, then he really was eldest young Sir Qin for nothing. The atmosphere between these two people wasn't too harmonious from the moment they met. He didn't know when his fifth brother got acquainted with the little stoic. It was truly quite rare to find someone who could gain the little stoic's approval. However, there were truly quite a few people who the little stoic disliked. It seemed like he was one of them. Eldest young Sir Qin rubbed his nose. Fifth young Sir Qin humphed coldly and didn't say anything, shifting his gaze outside the window. Knock knock. Someone lightly knocked on the door. Eldest young Sir Qin indicated for his personal pageboy to open the door. Mu Roxuan's gentle and dignified face was revealed when the door opened. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, Crown Princess. Eldest young master, fifth young master, I hope I'm not disturbing you?" "It's quite a bother," Arbor replied faintly. Everyone was speechless. Fifth young Sir Qin turned his head to glare at the little stoic and thought, would it kill you to speak properly? He didn't know what capabilities this little stoic possessed to make his eldest brother regard her so highly. The Crown Princess. Who would have thought that the junior physician he met at Langfang would be the one who caused everyone's expressions to change at the mention of the Crown Princess in the imperial capital? Mu Roxuan didn't mind the awkwardness as she walked in and said with a smile, "The Crown Prince, the Crown Princess, and the two young masters of the Qin estate have come to our Kaidai veranda, so I naturally have to be the host. This table is on me." Mu Roxuan sat down with a smile and said to the steward of Kaidai Pavilion behind her, "Bring the best wine and serve all the vegetables." The steward hastily bowed with a smile and retreated out of the door with his men. He was naturally a shrewd person and knew that the people in this private room were all wealthy and respectable people, so he quickly dispatched two people to guard the door to prevent anyone from offending the honored guests again. Mu Roxuan looked at the Crown Prince with a smile. Roxuan will toast to the Crown Prince first as a sign of respect. Your Highness the Crown Prince's distinguished status has condescended to our Kaidai Pavilion. Your presence brings light to our humble dwelling. 10 o'clock. Tomorrow, 6 o'clock. Slow neck, slow waist. Chapter 26:11. Prince Mo sized her up with an extremely indifferent expression. Seeing her dignified expression and natural and unrestrained appearance, she indeed didn't lose the dignity of a noble family's young lady, so he raised his hand and toasted her. He could be considered to have fulfilled the main family's great hospitality. Arbor turned to look at this eldest miss and said coldly, "You ran inside just to give us a toast?" State your objective as soon as possible. She never liked to beat around the bush, so Mu Rochuan definitely wouldn't visit her without a reason. Mu Rochuan wasn't angry and merely glanced at Arbor indifferently. Rochuan already knows about the Crown Princess's request to the Mu family. You want my mother to bring me and all the womenfolk of the Mu family to Yeshin Gate to welcome you. Could it be that you want grandmother to also kneel and welcome you? Mo Lien's eyes turned several degrees colder. Eldest Miss Mu's meaning is that we can't kneel to the Crown Princess? Mu Rochuan bit her lip, knowing that she had said the wrong thing. Even if she wanted her grandmother to welcome her, even if she had to kneel and welcome her, there was nothing inappropriate in terms of national law. In their great divine province, strength reigned supreme, and there weren't too many restraints on etiquette. So what if she was her grandmother? In the face of national etiquette, family etiquette still had to yield. Since you've said so, then I've changed my mind. Mu Rochuan sighed in relief, a faint smile on her lips. In that case, I want family head Mu to bring the entire estate to Yeshin Gate to welcome my mother and me. All the juniors in the estate must kneel 3 times and kowtow 9 times to welcome my mother. Are you satisfied with this arrangement? Mu Rochuan almost couldn't catch her breath, and her face turned ashen from anger. Her hands clenched tightly under her sleeves, and she suppressed her bellyful of anger as she said coldly, Crown Princess, it's best if you don't reach for a yard after taking an inch. This Crown Princess really likes to reach for a yard after taking an inch. The little stoic directly slapped her chopsticks on the table, not giving Mu Rochuan any face. Pass on my words to family head Mu. She squinted her eyes and said expressionlessly, I really hope that the Mu family can have pride and be fearless of death. If you want to die, I'll just watch. Isn't the Crown Princess going too far? Mu Rochuan angrily said, even if the Mu family has wronged you and your mother all these years, how many innocent people are there in the Mu family? How can you bear to bury their lives in your own willful and reckless actions? Innocent? Ha! Arbor laughed coldly. However, there was no trace of a smile on her face. This, on the contrary, made people feel extremely stifled. Are there any innocent people in the Mu family? Why did her mother give up her position as the family head's wife and leave her hometown to go to the lower star field? Concubine sure manipulated the dark hands behind the scenes and ruined her life. How many members of the Mu family were involved in this and persecuted her, this innocent and pitiful girl? It was just that she had become stronger in this life, which made them look weak, so they kept saying that they were innocent. The 5th young master felt his eyelids twitch. It turned out that the stoic face he saw in Langfang had a pretty good attitude despite being cold and conniving. You can save them. Arbor's eyes were full of mockery. Unreconciled? Arbor coldly said, this is only the beginning. I said before that your Mu family will suffer once I return. Even if you're a dragon, you'll have to coil up for me. Even if you're a tiger, you'll have to lie down for me. Unreconciled? Arbor's fingers clenched, and the teacup in her hand turned into powder. Endure it. Chapter 26:12. The private room was dead silent for a moment, and everyone kept quiet out of fear. The 5th young master, who was used to rebuking the little stoic, didn't even freaking dare to speak now. He only felt that the atmosphere inside the private room was heavy, and anyone with a discerning eye could tell that the stoic girl was doing her utmost to control her fury. Mu Rochuan forcefully suppressed the fury in her eyes, and there was an indescribable gloom coiling around her heart that was difficult to emit. The little stoic didn't say anything after that, but her eyes truly expressed one meaning, eldest Miss Mu. For the sake of your thousands of clansmen, shouldn't you stand up and fulfill your duty as the eldest miss of an aristocratic family? Mu Rochuan took another breath. Just as she was about to speak, she heard a knock on the door. The page boy had long been stifled by the atmosphere inside the private room, and he hastily stepped forward to open the door. The manager's smile bloomed like a flower as he led in a man and a woman wrapped in cyan cloaks. He laughed heartily and said, "Congratulations, eldest Mississippi, congratulations, eldest Mississippi, the Royal Academy sent someone to deliver an invitation." At this time, several waves of cheers had already come from downstairs. As the Royal Academy's important place to deliver invitations every year, Kaidai Veranda would always gather many people to watch on a specific day like this. It seemed that several people downstairs had also received an invitation from the Academy. After the cyan-cloaked man walked through the door, he directly raised his hand. Everyone saw a mechanical wooden bird flapping its wings, fluttering as it flew in from outside with a crimson invitation sealed with a circular seal in its mouth. The mechanical bird flapped its wings and landed on the table. It spat the invitation on the table, and its mouth opened and closed, emitting a middle-aged man's voice with clear handwriting. "Congratulations, student Mu Rochuan. I am Director Chiduo. I welcome you to participate in the Royal Academy's entrance exam this spring. Please bring this invitation with you to Wind Thunder City on March 15th of this year. At that time, someone will guide you on how to participate in the exam." A joyful expression instantly flashed across Mu Rochuan's face, and she reached out to pick up the invitation. She stood up and bowed respectfully to the two people who delivered the invitation. "Many thanks to the two of you." Arbor's mouth twitched as he thought to himself, what kind of invitation is this talisman technique? It's obvious that the royal school isn't that great. The two men and women who had delivered the invitation letters were the teachers of the ordinary class of the royal school. Towards these students who had the potential to enter the royal school, they were naturally very courteous. Especially since these two instructors had obviously already inquired about the identities of Emo Lien, eldest Qin, and the others present here, their expressions became even more respectful. The male instructor in a green windbreaker smiled and said politely to everyone, "Divine Prefecture's Crown Prince, Qin Estate's eldest young master, fifth young master, and Mu Clan's eldest young miss, then on March 15th, we will meet in Wind Thunder City. I won't bother you. Goodbye." Xiao Mu was a bit bewildered as she watched the departing figures of the two instructors. She then gloomily looked at Emo Lien. "You also want to go?" Emo Lien was also stunned. Only then did she remember something. She said, "Imperial father mentioned this to me in the study. All the heirs of the imperial family have to go to the academy for a while." In other words, the royal families of the three prefectures would send their princes to the academy to gain experience. Arbor propped up his little chin, and his little face was a little puffed up with anger. Lord Jojo was being looked down upon? They all had an invitation letter, but only Lord Jojo didn't. Seeing that the little fellow was angry, Emo Lien hurriedly coaxed, "Jojo, there's nothing fun in that academy." Chapter 26:13. Eldest young Master Qin couldn't help but laugh. That's right, the academy has everything from the three prefectures. There are even some barbarians who drink raw meat and drink blood and are uneducated. All they did was compete with each other all day long. There really wasn't much meaning to it. "Jojo, it's fine if you don't go." Sir Jojo's little face was indignant. Whether or not she wanted to go was one thing, but whether or not she could go was another. She actually didn't even have the qualifications to go to the Royal Academy? Everyone had an invitation letter, but she didn't? Jojo was so angry. Mu Rochuan smiled faintly and said, "Those who can participate in the Royal Academy's entrance exam basically have their own specialties. For example, fifth young master. Although he doesn't have any cultivation, he's also on the list of the Academy's invitees because of his excellent Guqin skills." Mu Rochuan explained faintly, "The Royal Academy includes cultivation, weapon refinement, pill refinement, talismans, array mechanisms, dance, music, books, painting, and so on. They all have specialized subjects and only take in the top talents of the three prefectures." In other words, Sir Jojo wasn't considered a top talent? Emo Lien rubbed the little fellow's head and said with a grin, "Jojo is the best." Eldest young Master Qin nodded repeatedly and said, "That makes sense. Jojo is the most talented girl I've ever seen. It's the Royal Academy's loss that they didn't send you an invitation letter." Sir Jojo nodded inwardly in deep agreement. That's right, it was the Royal Academy's loss that they didn't send her an invitation letter. Mu Rochuan was so angry that she wanted to laugh. This little girl's bad temper was caused by people's flattery, right? Mu Rochuan said very faintly, the Royal Academy has first-hand information on all the talents in the world. Even if you're in the most remote corner of the 3 prefectures and have been unknown for many years, you'll still be discovered by the Royal Academy. You don't have an invitation letter, which means that you're not recognized by the Academy. Of course, Mu Rochuan suppressed the mockery in her eyes and glanced at Arbor. How could a little third-level spiritual master with no outstanding cultivation and no other abilities enter the Royal Academy's eyes? She had clearly chosen to forget about the blue storage talisman in Arbor's hand. In fact, the blue storage talisman drawn by Arbor had already reached a new level. Not only could it store inanimate objects, but it could also store living things. Moreover, this was a height that the members of a talisman aristocratic family would never be able to attain in their lifetimes. It's merely an invitation. Xiao Mu pursed her small mouth and harumphed. It's merely a qualification for the entrance test. It's not like he's definitely going in. But you don't even have an invitation letter. You don't even have the qualifications to take the test. Mu Rochuan originally wanted to refute indignantly, but when she saw the Crown Prince's lukewarm gaze sweep over her, she immediately became speechless. The warning in the Crown Prince's eyes was too obvious. Mu Rochuan retracted her fist. She felt a faint anger in her heart, but she couldn't explain why. Her mother had clearly told her to get along well with the little girl, but for some reason, when she saw this expressionless face, she felt a faint trace of anger. She felt that under that calm stoic face, there was an insufferably arrogant arrogance. Mu Rochuan took a deep breath and stood up. Crown Prince, 2 zither gentlemen, then Rochuan will also take her leave. Her heart was now completely focused on the Royal Academy's invitation letter. She planned to go back and draw a few more talismans to prepare. Chapter 26:14. Arbor didn't even bat an eyelid and only said aloofly, "Don't forget to pass a message to family head Mu." Mu Rochuan's elated heart chilled again in a split second, and she stormed out in a huff. The little stoic was truly too hateful. She didn't even know how to describe this malicious little girl. She was indulging in the wildest fantasies. She actually wanted her father to lead a group of Mu family disciples to welcome her and her mother? Then what would she do to her mother? What would she do to the entire Mu clan's reputation? Putting aside the fact that Mu Rochuan rushed to the Mu residence in a fit of rage. Sir Jojo was eating this whatever weird vegetable series, but he felt somewhat listless. "Jojo, don't worry. With your talent, if you really show your face in front of the Royal Academy, the instructors of the various academies' special grade classes will definitely cry and yell as they fight to take you in as a student." Fifth young master silently twitched his mouth. What was going on? Why did his elder brother's style suddenly change? Although the Qin estate's eldest young master isn't much of a person, his words are especially true. "That's right, Jojo, that's how it is," Emolien said with a nod. "Eldest young master, what do you mean he's not much of a person? He's also very nice, alright." Sir Jojo harumphed and poked at the fried chicken in his bowl with his chopsticks. "Big liar." Emolien irritably glared at the Qin estate's eldest young master. "I'm calling you a liar." The Qin estate's eldest young master was instantly speechless. He swept a glance at Emolien and said, "Every word I said came from the bottom of my heart, so it's absolutely true." Jojo's heart dropped. The main thing was that everyone had an invitation letter, but she didn't. "Jojo, let me tell you, that Royal Academy isn't fun at all." Eldest young Master Qin slapped the table and shouted, "Did you know that old Fifth tore up the invitation letter he received? He still doesn't want to go." Fifth young master was stupefied. When had he ever said that he didn't want to go? "Big brother, don't you feel guilty saying this? Go. Emolien understood the little girl's feelings the best. She quickly took her little hand and comforted her. "Jojo, I'm not going either. None of us are going. There's no point in going to that lousy school. Whoever wants to go can go." Mr. Jojo looked at him listlessly. He thought for a moment and said, "Your father summoned you to the study and specifically mentioned this matter. That means you must go." "I'm already 20 years old. Why should I go to college?" "I'm not going." Fifth young Master Qin added, "In our divine province, 20 years old is merely an infant. The top students in the royal school are all under 100 years old. Mo Lien and eldest young Sir Qin were both speechless. Does this person not know how to speak without stabbing a knife? The little fellow watched from the side with a pitiful expression. His entire body was shriveled up. It's fine. Isn't it just an invitation? I'll get one for you, eldest young Master Qin said. Mo Lien cast an unhappy glance at him. Wasn't this eldest Qin getting a little carried away? He even referred to himself as Big Brother. Be good, hubby will get an invitation letter for you. Mr. Jojo propped up his little chin and turned to look outside the window. At this very moment, at the famous gathering place of the 3 prefectures, Wind Thunder City, which was independent of the 3 prefectures. Several mountain peaks enshrouded in a faint mist floated in the sky. It was the residence of Wind Thunder City's Royal Academy's principal, Yun Piaomiao. Near the evening of this day, the Royal Academy's principal welcomed an uninvited guest that he hadn't seen in a long time. When the visitor removed the large bamboo hat that was covered by a thin veil and revealed a face, Yun Piaomiao couldn't help but be stunned. Chapter 26:15. Big Brother. Yun Piaomiao's eyes were filled with excitement as he looked at his brother who had been missing for so many years without returning. It really is your big brother. Why did you suddenly come back? Aren't you happy? The person who came was wearing plain clothes. His expression was cold, but there was a faint smile in his eyes. How can I not be happy? Yun Piaomiao cried out happily. His brother had returned. How could he not be happy? No matter what other people thought, he was very happy. Don't tell the Yun family about my return. The person reached out and patted his shoulder. The 2 brothers had similar eyebrows, but compared to Yun Piaomiao's leisurely and indifferent expression, this older brother seemed to be more cold. Yun Piaomiao's eyes dimmed. Big brother, it must be hard for you to wander alone without a family to support you. That person smiled and shook his head. It's good this way. I won't force myself to live a life I don't want to live. Sigh. Yun Piaomiao sighed. Thinking of his brother's personality, he was speechless. Although his brother was cold, when he decided on something, even if you used 800 cows to pull him, you wouldn't be able to change his mind. All right, let's talk about other matters later. The person smiled and looked at him. He reached out his hand and said, Principal of the Imperial School, I'm here to ask you for 8 invitation letters. Yun Piaomiao was startled, then he laughed. What kind of little fellows actually need you to come personally and ask me for them? Very interesting. That person seemed to have thought of something interesting and chuckled. I can guarantee that your Imperial School will be very lively in the future. I'm looking forward to it, big brother. Yun Piaomiao took out 8 invitation letters and handed them to the other party. He couldn't help but laugh out loud. On the other side, Mo Lien, who had eaten a tasteless meal, came out of Kaidai Pavilion with the listless little fellow in her arms. With a few words, she sent the 2 troublesome fellows from the Qin estate away. Now that she was carrying the little fellow into the carriage, she couldn't help but say softly, Don't worry, it's just a copy of an invitation letter. I'll leave this matter to my husband. Copy. The corner of Arbor's mouth twitched. Wasn't that just making a copy of an invitation letter? How could she, Mr. Jojo, use counterfeit goods? Mr. Jojo snuggled his head into his arms unhappily with an unhappy expression on his face. Who would want a fake? Humph, if she didn't have an invitation letter, then so be it. When Mo Lien went to the academy, she would stay in the Eastern Palace to concoct pills, draw talismans, and cultivate diligently. After a while, he would surpass eldest Qin in terms of cultivation. Surpassing Duanyu. Surpassing Mo Lien. He surpassed everyone else. Crush them, chase them, beat them up like dogs, and make them all raise the white flag and surrender. Just the thought of it was interesting. What are you thinking about, baby? Mo Lien lowered her head and saw the little guy's daydreaming expression. Needless to say, his expression was somewhat hilarious and wretched. Could it be that he was thinking of beating someone up in his heart? I have to say, Prince Mo, you really hit the nail on the head. Not only does the little guy want to beat people up, he also wants to beat all of you up. Little Jojo turned his head and tilted his head to the side. He closed his eyes and said, "Time to sleep." Mo Lien couldn't help but laugh. This little fellow had suffered a blow today, so it was better for him not to provoke her. He didn't want to trigger her fuse and cause the little fellow to explode. That would be his bad luck. "Lien, how long will you be gone?" Chapter 26:16. The little one's voice was so soft and muffled that it touched Mo Lien's heart. "Jojo, you can't bear for me to go." Mo Lien's mood improved at once. Look, his darling was becoming more and more inseparable from him. How wonderful. He thought she was unhappy because she didn't receive an invitation, but it turned out that a large part of the reason was because she couldn't go with him. True, if he went to that Wind Thunder City alone, he would be separated from his wife. That wouldn't be good. Therefore, it was urgent to make a copy of the invitation letter. Mo Lien lowered his head and kissed her fluffy hair. "Jojo, don't worry. I won't go if you don't go. We are husband and wife and will advance and retreat together." After not receiving a response for a while, Mo Lien took a closer look and couldn't help but be amused and annoyed. This little fellow actually fell asleep in his arms with her eyes closed. After returning to the Eastern Palace, he carried the little fellow back to her room and wiped her hands and feet before carrying her to bed. That night, Jojo kept having sweet dreams of being the victor. When she opened her eyes the next morning, she was still bewildered and baffled. What was going on? Yesterday, she kept seeing herself chasing after Mo Lien and Duan Yu to beat up. She beat them up until they fell to the ground and repeatedly begged for mercy, calling them, "Your Majesty the Queen." Arbor's face darkened. Was there actually such a vile and violent gene in her bloodline? Impossible. Sir Jojo blinked and continued to sit on the bed in a daze. When Kai Xiu entered, she saw her little master sitting there in a daze with a comical expression. Kai Xiu couldn't help but smile. "Crown Princess, you're awake?" Arbor stomped off the bed and asked after washing up. I fell asleep yesterday. Call Eunuch Chen over for me to question him." Not long after, Eunuch Chen led a young eunuch into the room. "Greetings to the Crown Princess." Get up, get up." Arbor waved his hand and ran forward to ask, "Eunuch Chen, how was the debt collection yesterday?" "Very smoothly." In accordance with the Crown Princess's instructions, this servant asked Lord Huifeng to send someone to the Mu family. The Mu family has already prepared the supplies outside the door. We just need to check and load them into the car. Now that the goods are at the entrance of the warehouse, the Crown Princess needs to check them. Arbor shook his head. "Help me call Huifeng over." Eunuch Chen nodded and left. Soon, Huifeng walked in and bowed to Arbor with a grin. "Crown Princess, what orders do you have for this humble one?" Arbor looked at him and said, "Huifeng, I'll leave the goods we took from the Mu family to you. You can distribute them to your brothers." Huifeng was startled for a moment before he excitedly said, "Ah? Yes, Crown Princess. Huifeng will do it immediately." Arbor stretched out his hand to yawn. After watching Huifeng leave in a hurry, he said to Kai Xiu, "If anyone from the Mu family visits in the next 2 days, refuse to see them." Mu family, Gilded Garden. Mu Jingfeng stared at Mu Qingya, who was sitting next to him, with a tense expression. He sighed deeply and said, "You don't have to do this." Mu Qingya shook her head and resolutely said, "Family head, as a member of the Mu family, this is what I must do. This concubine will remember husband's consideration for my dignity." Mu Qingya smiled faintly. "But for the sake of the Mu family, what does this bit of dignity count for?" Chapter 26:17. Mu Jingfeng reached out to hold her hand. "Qingya, it's really unfair for you to do this." "It's not unfair, old master." Mu Qingya smiled faintly. "For old master, for the entire Mu family, and for the prosperity of everything, Qingya won't feel wronged at all. After sister returns, it's also possible for Qingya to step down from the position of matriarch of the household." "Don't spout nonsense." Displeasure flashed across Mu Jingfeng's eyes. What's so good about her being the head of the household? It's not like she hasn't been the matriarch before. Have you seen her manage things? Besides, she's been missing for so many years and doesn't understand the situation in China at all. Even if she returns, who knows how long it'll take for her to adapt to life here. This matriarch position is yours, and no one can snatch it away from you. Just take it with a peace of mind. I'll support you in everything. Mu Qingya looked at him worriedly. Old master, you mustn't bear a grudge against sister and Jojo for Qingya's sake. If you do, I'll have sinned greatly. Besides, Jojo is still young. After being outside for so many years, she must have suffered a lot. It's reasonable for her to have resentment in her heart. As long as we tolerate her, then, I'm the one who wants her to suffer? It's her own mother who caused it. Mu Jingfeng waved his hand and interrupted Mu Qingya's words. Don't speak up for her. I know what kind of character she and her daughter have. Mu Qingya choked. She wanted to persuade family head Mu again when she heard a report from outside. Family head, madam, eldest miss is here. Mu Rochuan stormed in angrily. Without a second word, she repeated what Arbor said in the afternoon. Instantly, the anger that Mu Jingfeng had just suppressed flared up again. He smashed the short table beside him with a slap and said angrily, "This unfilial daughter." Mu Qingya gently advised, "Rochuan, don't take things too seriously. She wasn't like this yesterday. Did you do something to piss her off?" Mu Rochuan was furious. What can I make her angry about? If I dare to say anything bad to her, her man will slap me to death. Mother, you didn't see the situation in Kaidai Pavilion. His Highness the Crown Prince didn't allow me to say a single word. I could only sit there and listen. There's also that eldest young master of the Qin estate. He also stood by her side and spoke in agreement. You didn't see it. I, your daughter, am not allowed to say anything in front of my younger sister. I feel that younger sister's bad habit of daring to argue with the heavens and the earth is caused by brother-in-law's indulgence. You didn't see how much brother-in-law spoils her. Mu Roxian poured out all her bitterness, and only then did she feel a little better. Ever since she met Arbor in Langfang, she had been in a bad mood. She couldn't find a reason why she didn't like this girl. It was probably because of the little fellow's poor attitude. During this period of time, he had been feeling aggrieved in his heart, and a fire was burning fiercely. He must have had 8 lifetimes of bad luck to meet such a weirdo. After hearing his daughter's complaint, Mu Jingfeng was fuming. She really knows how to push her luck. She really thinks that the Mu family is easy to step on. Mu Qingya worriedly said, "Husband, let's talk things over properly. What kind of enmity could there be between father and daughter? What else is there to talk about? This unfilial daughter is infuriating. Mu Liang is here. Go gather the elders. The Mu family's core members will have a meeting in half an hour." Chapter 26:18. Jingxing, Jingyuan, take the Mu family's elite disciples and make preparations. Immediately withdraw from the imperial capital in secret, Mu Jingfeng ordered coldly. Mu Jingxing and Mu Jingyuan exchanged glances. Old Fifth Mu Jingyang said indignantly, "Are we really going to withdraw? Our forces in the imperial capital can't be completely withdrawn in a few days. What else can we do? Are we really going to sit and wait for the emperor to execute our entire Mu family?" Mu Jingfeng said coldly. Old Fifth Mu Jingyang's mouth was full of bitterness. "Don't tell me it's true? Old Fifth, you aren't still that naive, right?" Mu Jingxing glanced at him angrily. The emperor personally wrote an imperial edict. How can it be fake? Today is the 4th day. Elder Qing sighed. Tomorrow is the last day. Xingchen, take your mother and sister, as well as your cousins and the elders' heirs, and leave using the transportation talisman matrix first. The elders' expressions visibly relaxed after Mu Jingfeng gave his order. They naturally had their own selfish motives. Compared to the entire Mu family, their heirs were naturally more important. Since they had reached this point, there was no room for negotiation, so they might as well give up on the Mu family's forces in the imperial capital and withdraw quickly. In any case, with their talisman patrician family's overall strength, they could settle down anywhere. At most, they would no longer mingle in the Great Divine Province and head to Tsong Province or Ming Province. Who would dare to not greet them with a respectful smile? However, their forces that had taken root in the Divine Province for thousands of years had to withdraw completely because of that girl's words. Just thinking about it made them extremely indignant. That daughter of the patriarch was really a jinx. She stirred up a storm as soon as she returned, causing the entire Mu family to be unable to find peace. It was truly better for her to continue disappearing, or simply take root on Seekong planet and never return. The elders' faces darkened as they angrily cursed the little stoic in their hearts. At this time, Mu Liang suddenly pushed open the door and walked in with a grave expression. Family head, the purple forest guards dispatched by the emperor have surrounded our entire Mu family. Mu Jingfeng closed his eyes. The fury in his heart had already reached its peak. The teleportation glyph array can only teleport 10 people at a time, and it can only be used 6 times in a row. The teleportation distance won't exceed 20 kilometers. Mu Jingyuan said coldly, "Currently, we only have 5 sets of teleportation array glyphs. How many people do you think we can save?" Mu Jingxing said angrily, "Third brother, look at the situation now. Why are you still angry with the patriarch? Now that the 7 of us brothers are of the same breath and branch, the whole family should be tied together like a rope." Mu Jingyuan sneered. Master refused to lower his head for that meager face of his. "I see that all of you are scheming for your own benefit. I don't believe that the elders present here wouldn't want to send their children out first." The elders glanced at Mu Jingyuan embarrassedly and were about to refute. Bang! The door was forcefully pushed open by someone. 3 or 4 of the clan's elite disciples had solemn expressions on their faces. They clustered around an old man with erect silver hair and a dignified face. "Jingfeng, make the arrangements. This old man will personally lead all of you to welcome my granddaughter home." Mu Jingfeng was startled. He hastily stood up and bowed to the old man in unison with his younger brothers and elders. "Old family head." Mu Tsangwei raised his hand. "Let's do it this way. She said 6 chapters yesterday, but in the end she still gave you 8 chapters. Chapter 26:19. It was close to noon. Both sides of the main road of Chengel Avenue were packed with people. The restaurants and tea houses were already filled with spectators, and everyone was relishing in discussing a major event. A major event that everyone in the imperial capital knew about. Chirp chirp, chirp chirp, the voices of the crowd mingled together, forming a chaotic symphony. "They're coming, they're coming. Ah, where's the procession? Hey, don't push, why are you pushing? You can't squeeze to the front no matter how hard you push." Fang Su led a group of forest guards and directed the imperial guards to the place where the people were gathered. They blocked the 2 sides of the road and shouted, "Don't push and shove. Maintain order. I see them coming." It was unknown who shouted this, but it was as if a pot of boiling water had exploded. Everyone stretched their necks and looked towards the main road with all their might. Whoa, a large group of people was really heading toward the imperial palace in a grandiose manner. Leading them was the hale and hearty old patriarch of the Mu clan, Mu Tsang. Patriarch Mu and Madame Mu followed closely behind the old patriarch. Following them were the 6 core sons of the Mu clan and a group of elders. Thousands of Mu clan disciples followed closely behind in a grandiose manner. Following the ceremonial official's command, they all knelt down in unison. Regardless of whether they felt comfortable or not, since it was the old patriarch's command, they all respectfully kowtowed 3 times in the direction of the imperial palace. The crowd of onlookers watched as the group of Mu family juniors walked a few steps before kneeling down and respectfully kowtowing 3 times. Their eyes couldn't help but widen in shock. Wow, this was really a grand ceremony of 3 kowtows and 9 kowtows. They were going all the way to the imperial palace to receive the crown princess. This lineup truly caused an uproar in the entire city. On the 2nd floor of Kaidai Pavilion, young masters and young misses from various sects and patrician families were seated in several private rooms. Second Qin was inside one of these private rooms, and his gaze was apathetic as he scanned the area below. Eldest young Sir Chin personally poured himself a cup of tea. After taking a sip, he clicked his tongue in praise. Sigh, I knew that my Jojo wouldn't go back so quietly. Look, only my Jo can make such a big fuss. Omega Kotoku remained silent. After a long while, he asked, You've seen her? Eldest young Sir Chin blinked and looked at him excitedly. I saw her beat up that second Miss Moo's nose in public. What do you think will happen when little Jojo comes home? Nothing much, Omega Kotoku said calmly. Tisk, eldest young Sir Chin glanced at him and muttered, boring? He then muttered to himself excitedly, I feel that the Moo clan's unlucky days have only officially begun now. Eldest young Sir Omega Kotoku was silent for a long while before saying, I think it'll be better if you put away that gloating face of yours. In the adjacent room, several young misses from noble families were sitting together by the window and watching the commotion below with mocking gazes. The Moo clan is truly regressing as they age. Chen Baojia couldn't help but remark coldly, look at how they're being toyed around by a little girl. I really feel sorry for them. Isn't that so? Ji family's young miss, Ji Xiong, couldn't resist laughing out loud. They're the 6 great patrician families with such little guts. What a joke. Chapter 2620. Zhongli Jiwei tilted her head and looked out the window, just in time to see old patriarch Mu Tsang leading a group of Mu family members away. She curled her lips and sneered, Don't talk nonsense if you don't know. This is an order personally given by the great emperor to force the Mu family to submit. Although the Mu family has 1,000 years of heritage, can an arm bend a thigh? They naturally don't dare to disobey the great emperor's order. Chen Baojia angrily grasped the handkerchief at her fingertips and forcefully suppressed her anger. However, a flower-like smile appeared on her face. Perhaps the great emperor has acknowledged her. Acknowledged? Is that possible? Zhongli Jiwei's face slightly darkened, and the cold light in her eyes disappeared. This woman caused a huge uproar as soon as she returned to the imperial capital. She really made people dislike her to the extreme. Zhongli Jiwei's face couldn't help but darken when she thought about how she was kicked out of the Crown Prince's residence after only a few days. His Highness the Crown Prince was only bewitched by that demoness face. He would get tired of her one day. Kneel. Following the ceremonial officer's command, the thousands of Mu family disciples knelt down again and kowtowed 3 times in unison. Then, they stood up and walked forward. Xiao Yingchun was mixed in the crowd, wrapped in a tattered bedsheet. She looked at the Mu family's procession, and her eyes almost shot out a poisonous light. Based on what? Why was it that when she returned to the Mu family, she was like a cat or a dog, casually picked up by them from the back door and thrown into a small courtyard in a corner, and that was it? Based on what, when that slut returned to the Mu family, she could cause such a huge commotion, and no one dared to question her? Xiao Yingchun was so angry that she couldn't help but tremble. Standing beside her, Madame Li, who had a hunched back and a face full of wrinkles, was also so angry that she wanted to rush up and beat her. Ingen, the Mu family is simply too much. Ever since the mother and daughter were kicked out of the Mu family, they lived a bitter life fighting for food with dogs. The 2 of them were ordinary people and didn't have any ability to survive. Without Xiao Tsong, this man, in front of them, the 2 of them lived a very miserable life. In fact, the 2 of them had stayed at the inn for 2 or 3 days at the beginning. They had pawned all the jewelry on their heads and lived a good life for 2 days. However, the prices in the Great Divine Land were exorbitant. The jewelry they pawned was only enough to last them for 2 days. On the 3rd night, they were beaten up and chased out of the inn because they couldn't afford it. After that, the mother and daughter were like a group of beggars, living in the poorest dilapidated temple in the north of Huanlang. They ate rotten steamed buns and drank cold water that stuck in their teeth. In the middle of winter, they were so cold that their hands were full of sores. In order to survive, the 2 of them discussed for a while and decided to pawn off the only 2 sets of clothes that were made of good material. They only wore a white undergarment underneath and snatched a sheet from a beggar to wrap it around their bodies to protect them from the cold. Then it was now. They heard that the Mu family was welcoming the little crown princess home, So they followed a group of passers-by who did not know the situation and came to watch the fun. It would have been better if they didn't look, but once they did, they were so angry that one Buddha ascended to the heavens and 2 Buddhas left their bodies. The people from the Mu family are a bunch of snobs? Madame Li shrieked. Back then, it was clearly them who fought to bring us here. Now, they don't care about our lives and even kicked us out of the house. Compared to the treatment they received in Arbor, the mother and daughter wished for nothing more than to hug each other and cry their hearts out, saying that the heavens were unfair and that people's hearts were unpredictable. Chapter 26-21. She even fought to bring the mother and daughter here? Madame Li didn't even know how to blush when she said this. How could they not understand the purpose of Shi Huixin bringing them to the divine land? However, it was funny that both mother and daughter were self-righteous people. They were weirdos who thought and considered everything from their own vantage point. Therefore, no matter what happened, both mother and daughter would never look to themselves for the reason. In any case, everything was someone else's fault. Mom, what should we do now? Xiao Yingchun resentfully glared at the Mu family's departing figures and said angrily, "That bitch stole everything from me. I won't let her off, I definitely won't let her off." Madame Li also nodded and said angrily, "All right, let's think of a way to make her forget about being the Mu family's young miss. We must disrupt her so that she can't even become the crown princess." "That bitch wants to steal everything from me," Xiao Yingchun said resentfully. "She should also have a taste of what it's like to have nothing." The mother and daughter swore to the heavens for a long time. Seeing that the Mu family's entourage had already passed, they sneakily retreated from the crowd. They originally wanted to head in the direction of the imperial palace, but a large palm suddenly reached out from behind and covered Xiao Yingchun's mouth and nose, dragging her into a slender alley at the side. Xiao Yingchun's eyes widened in horror, and she moaned a few times as her body was uncontrollably dragged into the alley. Her mother, Madame Li, was still cursing when she suddenly turned around upon hearing the noise. She shrieked in fright and chased into the alley while wailing. At this moment, the crowd outside was noisily discussing the Mu family's matters, so no one paid attention to the mother and daughter. Even after Xiao Yingchun was dragged into the dark alley and Madame Li chased after her, no one noticed that 2 insignificant beggars were missing from the crowd. Xiao Yingchun struggled with all her might, expending all the strength she had since she was in her mother's womb. Madame Li chased over and grabbed a burly man's arm, repeatedly scratching the back of his arm. "Ah, let go of my daughter, let go of her. Damn old hag, scram." The burly man slapped Madame Li to the ground and stepped on her foot. Madame Li suddenly felt pain all over her body. One of her leg bones seemed to have been broken by the strong man's foot. "What are you doing? What are you doing?" Xiao Yingchun screamed and pushed the man's arm with all her might. Unexpectedly, the man forcefully pinched her chin, and the dirty sheets wrapped around her body also hung on the ground. Xiao Yingchun's entire body trembled as she stared in horror at the one-eyed man in front of her. No, don't come over." "Oh, don't." Xiao Yingchun's body trembled as she repeatedly shook her head. Her eyes were filled with terror and panic, and she was practically unable to speak. The one-eyed man raised his hand to touch her face, and then muttered in disdain, "Shoddy work, I don't know if it can be sold for a good price. Let's go." What are you doing?" Xiao Yingchun's feet hit the ground as she was dragged into the alley. Madame Li hurriedly pulled out a wooden stick from the side and chased after her while dragging her crippled leg. She shrieked, "Let go of me. What are you doing? Old hag. Do I need to explain who I am to you?" Seeing Madame Li chase after him, the one-eyed man kicked her back. Chapter 26-22. Immediately after, he chased after the old woman and forcefully kicked her a few more times. The kicks caused Madame Li to cry out in pain. Soon, she was gasping for air and lying on the ice-cold ground in the alley, on the verge of death. "You and your daughter are out of luck." That burly man grinned mischievously. "I haven't eaten a full meal for several days. Once I sell your daughter, I'll have money." What are you doing? You scoundrel, let go of me, let go of me. Hey, who wants to scoundrel you? That burly man's slap came down, but after some thought, he still didn't hit Xiao Yingchuan's face. He directly tore off the cloth on Xiao Yingchuan's shoulder. An old woman's face with black skin and rough hands. If it weren't for the fact that I really don't have any food to eat, why would I catch you? I don't even know if the market will accept you. As the burly man grumbled, he grabbed Xiao Yingchuan's hair and directly dragged her into the alley. He didn't have the slightest bit of tenderness for the fairer sex. Xiao Yingchun shrieked in horror. She hugged that man's leg and howled, Let me go, strongman, let me go. Give me 100 spirit coins, and I'll let you go, woman. Xiao Yingchun felt even more resentful and powerless. Right now, let alone 100 spirit coins, she couldn't even find 1 spirit coin on her. You don't have any spirit coins? You don't have any spirit coins, yet you dare to babble nonsense to me. That burly man mercilessly grabbed her hair and pulled her scalp, dragging her inside like he was grabbing a little chick. Xiao Ying shrieked, Mother, mother, save me. Why are you lying there? Mother, let go. Mother, you old bastard, why don't you move? What are you doing? Are you just going to watch as your daughter is being sold? Useless thing. Trash, trash, trash. All of you are trash. Xiao Yingchun went from disappointment to despair, and then to vicious roars that filled the sky. How would she know that her mother, Madame Li, had been kicked to the ground by the burly man? Her limbs were all broken and she was lying on the cold ground, unable to get up. This small alley that led to the Jade Tripod Market was only bustling with activity at night, and the flowers were red and the willows were green. At this moment, it was broad daylight. Naturally, very few people came over. Therefore, it wasn't until late at night that the night watchman discovered in horror that someone had died in this small alley. By the time they found Madame Li, she was already lying on the ground with her eyes wide open. She had been frozen to death. This was all for later. At this moment, Xiao Yingchun was kicking and punching that burly man with all her might while cursing her old mother for not being strong enough. She was dragged all the way through the Jade Tripod Market's entrance by someone by the scalp. The rows of red lanterns at the entrance of the Jade Tripod Market were naturally dark. The door was tightly shut. The brawny man walked to a small door at the side and knocked on the door with force. The small door quickly opened, and a hunchbacked old man came out to greet him. He glanced at him and couldn't hide his disgust as he said, Wang Ba, why are you here again? Didn't our Yin Yang already warn you not to come here? Hey old man Li, don't block my path to wealth. Scram, scram, scram to the side. I naturally came here today to deliver goods for Yin Yang. Let go, let go. The hunchbacked old man called Old Man Li swept a mocking glance at Wang Ba. Heh, you brat, who knows where you caught this unmarried maiden again? Chapter 26-23. A Virgin? Sun Yang, a middle-aged woman with a bare chest and arms, was sitting on a cushion covered in deer hair. She wore a large string of sandalwood beads on her hand and had a black mole at the corner of her mouth. When she heard this, she didn't even lift her eyelids and directly smashed the teacup next to her at Wang Ba's head. Do you believe it yourself? Wang Ba, I think you're becoming more and more unfashionable. Do you think my Jade Tripod Market takes in all kinds of goods? Look at this woman. She doesn't have a figure or a face. Most importantly, why did you bring a normal person to my place? Wang Ba smiled apologetically and said, Big Sister E, do you think you can give me a few dozen spirit coins? Just treat it as my traveling expenses. If you don't like her, you can also make her a servant girl who cooks fires and washes feet. But Yin Yang almost spat on Wang Ba's face. I want such a good-for-nothing to be a servant girl who cooks fires and washes feet? Do you really think this old lady is stupid? Scram, scram, scram. Hurry and drag this good-for-nothing away. My guess here won't take a fancy to this kind of trash. Even if you give her away for free, they won't want her. What they wanted was a cultivation furnace. Of course, fair skin and beautiful looks were the most important conditions. Who would fancy such a dark and swarthy girl who looked like a country bumpkin? Ah, big sister E, please be kind and give me some traveling expenses. Wang Ba shamelessly kicked Xiao Yingchun and scolded, hurry and scram over there and serve big sister E well. Scram, scram, scram. Yin Yang was annoyed by Wang Ba and turned around to shout at the old man with the mop, Old Li, what are you doing? Next time, you're not allowed to let this scoundrel in again. Yes. Old Li was also muttering in his heart after being scolded and glared angrily at Wang Ba. Alright, just treat it as this old lady being unlucky and sending you off with a good deed every day. Give him 10 spirit coins, big sister E, can I call you mother? How can 10 spirit coins be enough? 20 spirit coins and I'll leave immediately. Wang Ba looked at Yin Yang shamelessly and laughed. Yin Yang looked at him and felt annoyed. She quickly asked someone to take out 20 spirit coins and send him away. From beginning to end, Xiao Yingchun had been curled up in a corner, not daring to move at all. Seeing that the burly man was about to turn around and leave her here, she hurriedly followed after him. Wang Ba turned around and kicked her, saying angrily, useless thing. Don't follow me, do you think I have to waste food to feed you? After saying that, he tossed Xiao Yingchun aside and left without looking back. Xiao Yingchun was so angry that her entire body was trembling. Her entire body was paralyzed on the ground as she turned her head to look at Yin Yang in horror. However, Yin Yang curled her lips in disdain and said, this kind of trash. If she were to be sold as a side dish for the customers, I'm afraid the customers wouldn't even like her. Raising her is also a waste of food. Drag her out and bury her as fertilizer. Xiao Yingchun was completely stupefied. She lay limply on the ground. When she saw the 2 shop assistants from Jade Tripod Market seriously coming over to pull her away, she knew they were serious. She hastily shrieked and let out a cry before her death. No, don't use me as fertilizer. I can use it, I can. Xiao Yingchun didn't know where she got the strength from, but she shoved the 2 shop assistants aside and scrambled over to Yin Yang. She shrieked, Yin Yang, I know there's a good one. I have a good one in my hands. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.